Hello, hello, hello. I'm Ross, your ex-president. Let's give a little moment for the signal to go out, and we'll get everybody locked in here. See my Mir 1 disobey the system there. I got my left from my right kind of convoluted there, and of course you can see the most dangerous game on that side right there. Shout out Pixie, what's good? Let's give it another 30 here. You guys know what we're here for. This is the Zodiac Files, the live interview series. So all right, I see a couple of you guys in there. What's good? You guys ready for the show? We also just did the Desert Fiends review. Go check that out. Not too much new here. We'll talk to D about where to find his stuff, but definitely I want you guys to go check out the One Killer Theory essay. I posted it before. What up, Darkside? Give it a few more seconds here, and then we'll introduce the man of the hour. Of course, like, sub, share. Click the join button for membership. You can pop over to the Patreon if you're feeling saucy. You can also join free with whoa, that's a lot of light there. Change the hue, but you can also join free on your Gmail. We'll take any questions for me at the end, but I think without further ado, we will bring on my favorite researcher from the Zodiac community. Something I don't say very long. You guys know I'm not a very complimentary type of guy. Without further ado, he's down under, but he's not in Australia. It's my man, Dion Walker. He's out in New Zealand.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Ross. Thank you very much, mate, for the opportunity to come and chat with you on the show and with everybody else.
Yeah, man. It's so I proposed Dion come on the show years ago. I mean, your stuff has been 80 to 90% behind the scenes, Dion. You've only recently gone public in recent years, recent months, and kind of put maybe, I imagine, a small amount of your research and pertaining to the amount that you've done behind the scenes. So we will definitely be discussing all of that. Yeah.
Like I say, I tend to stick to myself a lot and concern myself with more with just output and doing research, because a lot of the stuff I do is very heavy work, as you know, Ross. Like, it's not a lot of theorizing, it's a lot of deep diving into the official documentation and looking at trying to acquire more documentation. So it's pretty esoteric and not a hell of a lot exciting, but I've managed to extract some interesting pieces out of what I've done. And so I'm a bit more comfortable about sort of coming out and going public with a lot of this stuff. But no, it's just nice to be here, mate. And
100%. And this is also Dion's return. This is his solo interview. But when I had him and Craig on, Zodiac's media influence on the Zodiac letters topics, I personally thought it was an excellent show. One of the better ones. Craig was absolutely amazing. And I know he had been behind the scenes for years. So, major props to you guys for doing that debut here at PXF. As I said, so Dion is the author of the One Killer Theory. I thought it was you're an amazing writer, Dion. I thought that was one of the better written pieces I've seen on Zodiac in general. So we'll have that below in the description. I want everybody to go check that out to see what you said. I tend to agree with, the vast majority of what you presented there. We got that coming up later. I want to focus on your work on the FBI files and your FOIAs and everything of that nature. Before we even go that route, let's just introduce you and talk about your origin and your research. Anywhere specifically you want people to find you or find the link to your stuff.
Good as gold, mate. Look, a lot of people probably don't know who I am, and of course you won't, because I'm not really out there. So just a little bit about me. I first started getting into the whole true crime genre in around about 2001. And at the time, I just left the Air Force. I was in limbo, reintegrating back into civilian life. And I had a lot of spare time on my hands. And where I was living, there was a lot of books sort of on the bookshelf. And one of them was a book by John Douglas called Mindhunter, and I'm sure you've all read that one. And at the time, when I'd left the Air Force, the office I was working in, right next to that was a storage hangar with a boat there that was being stored there as part of evidence in an ongoing murder trial here. And so I was kind of getting interested anyway. And the John Douglas book tipped me over the edge, basically, as I think it did for a lot of people. Just a fascinating, absolutely fascinating book to read, an insight into the criminal mind kind of thing. And I also had a bit of money at that stage because we'd had a superannuation payout from the Air Force. And so I bought myself a flashy computer and got on the internet and found a website called truecrimelibrary.com. I think a lot of the old school researchers will remember that website. You can still actually access it on the Wayback. And gee, what an absolute treasure trove of true crime information, serial killers, unexplained phenomena, unsolved mysteries. And I happened upon an article in that site by a researcher by the name of Jake Wark. And I'm sure a lot of the old school guys will remember him too. And that got me really gripped. You know, here's this serial killer. Like the way Jake articulated it was brilliant. It was just so fascinating to me, Ross. You know, here's the serial killer who just appeared to have no rhyme and reason. I mean, most of the serial killers I'd read about to that point, you could actually sort of say, you know, he did it for that reason, or there was some rhyme or reason about it, no matter how messed up it actually was. But with the Zodiac, here's a guy who was just killing people for no apparent reason and sending in all this evidence, like as if he just didn't care. And then this goes on for years and years. He's created all this confusion as to which letters are from him, who did he kill, when did it start? You know what I mean, brother? It's just one of those cases that, yeah, it just grips you like that. So, of course, at that stage, back in the early 2000s, there weren't many places to go as far as the Zodiac case goes. So we all made our way to zodiackiller.com. Some real characters around in those days on the message board. And you can actually access that on the way back as well. Anyone that goes back there to see that will see some of my comments under the moniker Tex Walker. So, yeah, that's where I started out. And back in those days, as I said, we didn't have access to the police reports or anything like that. So it was a much different time. And there was a lot more speculation sort of going on in those days. But, yeah, anyway, fast forward. And about 10 years ago, like life, as it does, Ross, it happens, you know, you go and do life. And then about 10 years ago, I got invited into a Zodiac Facebook group by Monique, who's a fellow friend and researcher that you'll know from the groups. And I joined the community group there, and holy heck, what an absolute nightmare. You know, I went into the group expecting it to be good discussions about the case, and it was just all sorts of misinformation and all these convoluted theories and stories and just absolute rubbish, you know, the whole my daddy is the Zodiac thing. And it was quite discouraging. But There were some good people in there, mate. And what happened is a few of these people about, you know, less than 10 years ago sort of broke away and created the Zodiac Killer discussion group on Facebook. And that's when I started to get into the more serious side of the research. And that's where I bumped into guys like Nick Doddabart. Now, not many people have heard of Nick, but he, to me, is one of, if not the best researcher this case has actually ever seen. Absolute brilliant researcher. And it was back in, he's brilliant, mate. And through the admin of that discussion group, Jim Stye, a group of us started to sort of get together a little bit and start, getting in touch behind the scenes and just coming together with very similar moral outlook and very similar ideas with regards to research. And Nick had the proposition to create, basically at the start, the Zodiac Archive Project. It was designed as nothing more than the biggest archive of newspaper articles on the case that we could get our hands on. And so we started building this database up of the the newspaper articles and creating a register for them. It was basically just a resource to save time so that we didn't have to go back looking for things all the time. As more members joined the ZAP, like Destry Hines and a few other people, and the skill set of the people in that group improved, we started expanding to include things like the police reports, the FBI reports, and creating text search database, so that if you were looking for something specific in the police reports, you could find it with an easy text search, that sort of thing. But we started running into problems, of course, because as you guys know, not all of the police reports are legible. And don't get me started on the FBI reports. Well, you'll get me started on them very freaking soon. Don't worry about that. So that's where the Zodiac Archive project all kicked off. And I started up my personal group around that time. And of course, they invited me as an administrator into the discussion group. And at that point, I sort of thought, well, I'm going to have to learn the case a lot more than I know it now, because we all think we know this case, don't we? When we first start getting into the Zodiac case and studying it, we all think we know it. And as you know, mate,
me, because I watched the movie and I was like, well, it's definitely Arthur Lee Allen, and I didn't know anything.
yeah, exactly. We all start somewhere, my brother. And it's quite funny because the funny thing is that the more we learn about this case, the more we realize we just don't know stuff all about it, mate. And that's what is being driven home to me. The more I read through all the material, the more I read other people's material, the more I realize we just don't know shit, mate. But yeah, anyway, that all sort of kicked off. And in the end, unfortunately, just as COVID was approaching, a few of our team members had some personal tragedies of the type that, I don't want to go into it too much, but it kind of derailed a lot of the things we were doing with the project. So we regrouped and decided, right, we'll take a different aspect of approach with our research and start making it more of a personal thing, like not just researching the case and the details, but actually researching the people associated with the case. And what that did was it basically provided a much more of a personal aspect to our research. Like you started to identify with the people involved in the case a lot more. So it was easier to kind of develop more of a passion for what we were doing. And so in the end, we created this archive with information, just as much information as we could about the case, and created resources within it so that if you needed to access information, find a letter, find a police report, find a picture of somebody, you could go straight to it and not have to look for it for minutes and minutes and minutes. That takes a lot of time. This case, as you know, Ross, has a lot of information in it, and half of the battle is trying to find out who said what and where they said it. So that was part of the whole process. And so Nick and myself and Monique and Craig Rhodes, who came into the project, I think you guys will know him as Craggle on the forums. He came into the team sort of around the COVID era as well. And that was where we started to churn out the research for a good couple of years, starting to interview some of the witnesses in the case, just make a lot of grounds. So with the FBI stuff, that started, as I said, around about the start of the COVID era, around 2020. We had a lot of spare time here in New Zealand because we were put into several lockdowns. It was a bit of an ambiguous time. You know, we weren't sure what was going on. And I sort of looked at the FBI files and said, you know, if we're going to create registers for the police reports and everything else, we really need to go through these things and see if we can squeeze everything we can out of them. One of the things with the new researchers coming through is that there's not much stuff left to discover in this case for people. All of the good stuff has been found and discovered by other researchers previously. So every time you think you've discovered something original, you friggin' haven't, because you're going to go back and you're going to think, oh, well, Deb Silver's already found that, or Craggle or Tom, or someone's already found it, basically. Yeah. So my concept was, we haven't really looked at the FBI files properly in depth like that before. So why not see if we can't just sort of squeeze everything we can out of there? Every drop, and holy crap, I wish I could jump in the DeLorean and go back and tell myself, don't go there, son, don't go there. but it's done now. So basically it was a nightmare of a project that required hundreds and hundreds of hours. But the first process, obviously, all the information that we have in the FBI files at the moment is in PDF form. And as you guys know, if you've been to the FBI vault, there's 6 different downloadable PDFs, and there are 709 individual files in those PDFs. Now, I did a Freedom of Information Act request 3 or 4 years ago for bulk Zodiac stuff, and I received a package of 3 PDFs, and they had 835 files in it. Now, Mike Morford, he did a request several years ago. And from what I understand, he got 6 PDFs with 846 files in among them. So we've got 3 different sets of Freedom of Information Act, well, not Freedom of Information Act requests, because the FBI vault files are just in the vault.
Right.
But different results from the same request, basically. Yeah. And that should tell us straight away that there is the potential to actually get more information out of these guys. I also bought, there's a website called paperlessarchives.com, and they had some Zodiac FBI files for sale, and I bought those. It was a PDF, 3,035 individual files. So basically between them, mine, Morph's, and the vault files, there were 5,425 FBI files to sort through. Good luck. So basically the first job was converting them to JPGs, because trying to do it in PDF was a nightmare. And to approach it, what I did first was put them into chronological order. So basically I started a table writing the dates of all the files on them. That way I was easily able to weed out the double ups and that sort of thing. But what I started to notice was there was a very ubiquitous number on these documents right from the very get-go, 9-49911, and then a sequential number. And I figured out pretty quickly that was obviously a pretty centrifugal number to what the systems, the paperwork systems, were actually designed around. So I actually started including that number in the new file name I was creating for each PDF of the file. And once I'd gone through all 5,004,337,000,000,000 of these files, I was left with 10 different categories, subcategories, because at that stage I was putting them into topics like handwriting and letters, latent fingerprints, suspects, handwriting, suspects, just different topics. But realistically, that wasn't the best way to organize them. So I then started sorting them into serial numbers. Now, this was the part of the project that took the longest, because less than 40% of these documents had the actual serial number, 9-499- number, on them. So I was forced to basically use deduction, use dates, reference dates, and familiarize myself with all of the different document numbers, lab numbers, and all of the rest of that jargon, FBI technical jargon, to try and piece them together. But I did it, and I think I've successfully managed to serialize 99% of the 1,200 or so unique FBI files that we actually have in the public domain. Yes, we have, I think it's 1,263 unique FBI files and counting. I know, just some useless information there. So, we did that, and there are also a few non-Zodiac serial numbers. We had the DB Cooper submission. There was a submission to compare the handwriting between that note from the DB Cooper case and the Zodiac handwriting. That was from the DB Cooper series. Yep. And there were a couple of others like that. And there were also, basically up to 1994, we had 237 files, like different serial numbers. But there's not 237 serials, because there's actually sequentials as well. Like, it doesn't just go 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You'll get 10, 11, 12, 13, 13X, 13X1, stuff like that. They have little subsets of these serials, and they make no sense because the subsets don't reflect what the actual main serial is. So I don't know what the FBI was smoking back then, but their systems are just pretty crazy like that. But to be able to do that, it was a very cathartic process to be able to line everything up like that and actually have a proper series for the paperwork, rather than having to run through all these PDFs. If you want to reference something, PDF 5 page this and that, and scroll through all that. Now it's just like, go to serial 28, bro. Easy, go and find it, and there it is. There's all the information pertaining to what you're going for. And basically that was it. We have some serials missing. Now, they're sequentially numbered 1 to 237, these submissions, but we have some missing. 73, 117, 144, excuse me, and 192. So I have been FOIAing the crap out of those to try and get somewhere with them for no dice. We have sequels, as I said before, subsets, 13x, 21x, 56x, 59x, blah, blah, blah. I'll go through some of those later. What I will actually do, Ross, I'll just cover, I'll give an example of how these just don't work like that. The 20, and a good example is serial number 21. Now, this particular serial deals with a submission by San Francisco Police Department to the FBI. And what it is, they include an interdepartmental memo, which was also sent to Vallejo Police Department, Solano County Sheriff's Department, Napa, and the CI&I, Criminal Investigation and Identification. And basically, it was a submission of copies of the latent fingerprints found on Paul Stein's taxi cab. And I think people have seen the photographs of those latent prints going around. And effectively, this submission is saying, SFPD is saying, we believe that the prints underlined are the prints of the suspect, blah, blah, blah. There are also some other latent fingerprints that may or may not be the suspect. And what they're doing is they're asking the FBI to check some suspect against those prints. Mm-hmm. We'll get into the latents a wee bit more later on, but that's what 21, the serial number 21 is about. Now, 21X, you would think that would be to do with those prints and with it maybe even a conclusion about the latent fingerprints. Hell no, the FBI allocated this serial number to an informant from Atlanta who rang up the Atlanta branch of the FBI and says, oh, I just heard your Dunbar show call, and I heard the voice on that, and I think I know who that is. So I think I know who the Zodiac Killer is. So it was something completely different. And of course, the FBI declined to investigate that because it's not their problem. It's not their jurisdiction. Right. So they basically turned around and cock-blocked them and said, no, we don't care. And then we have 21X1, which is another subset of 21. And again, it's got nothing to do with either of them. It's an informant that has contacted the FBI and says, that Cipher they sent, and I found an anagram in there that is the solution. So I know who the Zodiac Killer is. And again, you can guess what the FBI's reply to that person was. Not our problem, bro. Which is what they basically gave.
So many of those, I would imagine. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's very colloquial feedback for the FBI to give people that would write them in, like informants. Basically, these days, people coming to post on the groups and that sort of thing with their crazy theories, they used to have to go to the FBI. Back in 1970, there was no internet, so they had to go somewhere with their crazy crap. And it's funny because looking through these files, it's clear that a lot of them have gone to the state agencies first, like SFPD, Vallejo, Napa County, and been rebuffed. And what happens is they go to the FBI with the same story, saying, I went to the state agencies, gave them this evidence, and they pushed me away. So I've come to see you guys about it. And so the FBI, they're great trolls, mate. They write letters back to these guys, and they're very nice about it. I'll give them that, but it's a little condescending too. The FBI love to troll people. They've done it to me, and again, we'll get into that soon. They'd get back to these informants and say, look, we appreciate that you've given this information. We really do, but we don't care. Basically, we don't care. Once I'd serialized all the files and we had them nicely organized, I took a break because holy crap, this stuff just does your head in. And it'll be doing everyone else's head in at the moment. Sorry, I haven't been looking at the comments. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Fire Pixie. Hi, Darkside. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Good
job, Dion. Stick to your goal.
Stick to the thing. Yeah, we're on a time thing. Right. So the next run through I did of these things, it's nice to have them in serial and to have all of the files in each serial. A lot of the files don't actually mean anything, but some of them are important. And what I did was take the important ones, and I've managed to create another chronological timeline. And there's basically a on my basement site. I assume there'll be a link to that somewhere. I'm going to put a link out to the FBI stuff I have been doing with regards to the 3 categories that I've put them into now and the timelines I've created. They're chronological, and they're in 3 sort of broad categories, main categories. And what I'll do is I'll introduce these 3 categories of FBI files that we have, and I'll give a general rundown of them. So the first lot we've got chronologically is forensics, which is basically your letters, the handwriting analysis done on these letters, which is the Zodiac confirmed ones, the maybes, the not even close ones, and then some other random ones that have been submitted. And the next category is suspects. So this encompasses probably 75% of the FBI submissions, the suspects. The state agencies will request the FBI to compare fingerprints or handwriting or both for a suspect. There's a lot of those, and a lot of them are just filler. There's a lot of redacted files that we can't get the information from them because it's all blacked out. There's just nothing to see. So
yeah. And
the third main category is like informants and other miscellaneous submissions. So basically you get people calling into the FBI saying, I think I've solved the cipher, or I know who the Zodiac is. It's my brother's uncle's cousin's dad's mailman. I've solved the cipher. I've got evidence. You know what I mean? Everyone's seen these kind of.
We do have a mailman suspect in the mix. Maybe we'll come to him later on.
I'm sure we do. I think just about everyone in the United States that was around in those days has been
every profession you could possibly find.
I mean, gee, I could make a case for my dad to be the Zodiac too, except for the fact that he was 7,000 bloody miles away.
If Dad has a similar accent to you, I think that would have threw some things off.
I'm sure I can speak like you guys too, man. You know,
dude, that's how you know this guy's a classically trained actor. That was damn good, bro.
Excuse me. Don't look at me, man. Everyone wants me to talk like an Australian every once in a while too, but I don't speak pig, mate. I can't do that. So
yeah, she'll be right, mate. Yeah. Oh, gee, crikey, I don't know about that. Steve Irwin, Bungalow, all that.
I watched a lot of Mad Max, so I could probably come up with something for you. All right, you're cruising. Let me jump in here. So the ZAP. So I was going to call him Nick D. You said Nick's name. I didn't know if he wanted it out there like that, but I'm sure he's out there in the ether anyway. So a lot of people don't know. Early on, people that helped me out in my research. Obviously Beeson, obviously Howard Davis. Rest in peace, like his research or not. Dion and Nick helped me out early on, so I helped. So me and Dion came in contact after my Riverside episode 3 through the Cherry Joe Bates group, ironically, which is kind of funny for me and you to meet in that kind of tangential case. And actually, Dion kind of giving me the keys to the castles here. So a lot of the articles you guys saw in episode 4, Gaviota Beach, came from Nick and Dion's Zap. So and I did credit obviously Zap to that to Nick's wishes. Because it's just kind of funny, Dion, when people hit me with when I get the criticism, right? Because it's on the internet. Oh, Ross is a talking head that brings everybody else on, but doesn't actually do everything himself. So I have access to all these files. Do I go through them like Dion and Craig do? No, absolutely not. Clearly I don't. You know what I mean? Clearly I don't. And also I have you guys as a resource, so it's very easy for me to just ask you guys.
You don't need to. This is why we created the Zap and those resources in the start, mate, so that people didn't have to struggle reading through all of the stuff. You can go to things. Exactly. And also, as I said, as the Zap, we try and help other researchers out. So if you need to find something or want us to try and find something, come and approach us. That's what we're all about. No, we're objective. There's no pre-designed theories or suspects here. We're all just trying to find more answers. My angle, my thing in this case is trying to get more official documentation and most specifically through the FBI systems. And that's how I think we can get forward with this case a little bit more. It might be a pipe dream, but hey, I'd rather do that than try and research something that's perhaps not even related to the case. And I'm not saying that people are doing pointless research in that direction. Everything has a point. We don't know what's important in this case. So I would just rather spend my time doing something that if the research is a failure, then at least I'm leaving a footprint on the case that somebody can get some benefit from. Yeah. And that's the whole idea of this project team, brother. And Nick was the same. His research was geared around the same. He's even more private than I am, and he doesn't mind that his name being said. He's been out there plenty of times, but he doesn't get involved in the case anymore. Monique does now. She's back, which is great in a limited capacity.
Yeah,
and it's,
Monique's
as I said,
amazing. I feel like, I know she knows her stuff. I feel like to get on Monique's radar, you need to really say something completely outlandish for her to drop the camera on you. When she just can't take it, she's like, no. You know what I mean?
If you think I'm pragmatic, Monique makes me look like a freaking idiot, mate. Honestly, she is no fool, and she will not engage unless she sees some tangible benefit. And I'm the same in a lot of ways. Like I'm very tolerant with people and their theories, and as I said, we don't know what's important, so you've got to give everything a go. But some things really, like I've always said about this case, we do need to think outside the box. There's no doubt about that, but we need to be careful of standing outside the box and pissing on it. And far too many people do that.
100%.
We need to stick. Yeah, we need to stick to the facts, and it's fine to go off on our little tangents, and we just don't know where things are going to go. But let's just keep things real and not go too far outside the box. So that's all I'm saying.
That's what I've been saying. So my favorite thing about Dion, Nick, Monique is you guys are much more concerned with the facts of the case than you are getting your names out, your own egos, and that's why really before Dion came on with Craig, at least my audience, or maybe outside of the discussion groups and the Sherry Joe groups, you guys probably obviously seen Dion in there. But that's why Dion's my favorite researcher, man. When I talk about this case with this guy, we stick directly to the facts. This guy Dion never interjects himself, and also you're the most humble researcher I've ever encountered in Zodiac. Like you never put your ego or yourself before any of the facts of the case. And as I said, behind the scenes, early on, when I had questions, I was always asking Dion and Nick. A lot of people don't know that because I never really announced it until now.
We're not here for attention. Never have been. It's not about us. It's about the case. It's about the victims. It's about doing what we can to help out. And I understand people are here for different reasons, and that's fine. I've always said too, Ross, that one of the most powerful messages or communications you can give is silence. And we were just saying before about Monique, and in that fashion, like if I also go by the maxim of, if you've got nothing nice to say, just don't say it. So that's probably why I'm quite quiet around the place as it is as well, mate. Not that I never have anything nice to say, but it's just that I would rather, if I'm going to say something, I'd rather it was constructive. I would rather come out and give something positive, give something constructive. If I'm going to, too many people come into the community and say things just for the sake of saying them. And it's like, Agreed. Are you making this about you, or is this about the discussion in general? Let's collaborate, not make it all about you. And it's part of the whole New Zealand thing too. Like where I'm from, we're all the same. There's the people I surround myself with, we're all just getting on with life. No one's better than anyone else.
100%.
And there's things that I do in this case that I do well, but there's a lot of things that I don't know jack about, and that's where you look at other people's research and you collaborate. But too many people want to force their research onto you. And it's like, if I want your research, I'll search you out. And I've always said to people, if anyone wants to know anything about the FBI files or anything like that, come and see me. That's what it's all about, Ross. Working together, sticking to the facts, but also being able to think outside the box as well, like people do. It's just that big happy medium without going too far, like the occasional
100%. Does. Yeah. I mean, what I always picked up from you specifically and your whole research team, obviously, Craig is probably the one I've spoke to the most outside of yourself, is that the clear respect for the victims and the victims' family. This is an actual serial killer unsolved cold case, and there are lives lost and families involved. And when people get into the fantasy and the choose your own adventure, and my suspect is, hey, Zodiac used an Apollo stamp. Hey, maybe Zodiac's an astronaut. When you just jump off on a completely random tangent that is not sure, I can cherry pick any fact as Dion said and go off on a tangent on it, but it doesn't make that Zodiac, and it doesn't make pointing any of these random suspects make them Zodiac. There's some ALA talk in the chat. I just want to shoot it down real quick. It was about Alan, wearing the Zodiac brand watch. So, I mean, he wore the watch into the police station for an interview, but it would be even a small estimation for me and Dion to say hundreds of people probably had Zodiac watches at this time, more likely thousands. So just to
They were
point out
service issue at one point.
one guy owning one, you know what I mean? It doesn't really do
They were
much.
service issue. They were a common item, basically.
Yeah.
I don't read too much into that at all, but yeah. Just getting back to what we were saying before too, Ross, I think a lot of where my moralistic views come from, the case I get involved with here in New Zealand is one of miscarriage of justice, where there's a guy who's been put away for murder that he just flat out did not do. So I have a bit of empathy there with people that get accused of murder. Now, don't get me wrong. If you are going to accuse somebody of murdering no less than 5 people in cold blood, you best have some darn good friggin' evidence behind yourself to back that up, because that is a very, very serious accusation. You're accusing somebody else, a human being, of taking other, and not just one life. I'm talking about not just killing people. I'm talking about terrorizing an entire freaking country. And that is a very serious accusation. So I don't treat that lightly. I know a lot of people don't like me because of that attitude. And I think some people cast the accusation, the finger of guilt, too quickly at people.
Agreed.
And
100%.
I'm not talking about the Allens, Sullivans, Canes. They've been out there for years, you know, and so there's no problem with that. There's reasons that these guys are suspects. But I'm going to bring up Gary Poston as an example.
100%.
If I had brought Gary Francis Post to the FBI, the state police departments, I would have been laughed off. If I had taken Gary Francis Post to the media, they would have laughed me off. But because he had this so-called backing of team of ex-police detectives, FBI agents, investigative journalists, you know, forensic technicians, and the 1988 Jamaican bobsled team, and the friggin' all the rest of the, you know, 3 stoned aliens called Jeff, Steve, and Andre. I don't know. If they all go to the media and the FBI, and all of a sudden they want to make a documentary about it, you know.
So instead they just got laughed off by the Zodiac community, and not
it's all about presentation, brother. The trefoil one. No, as I've been told, people say the craziest of things on their deathbed. I got reminded when this John Trefoil story came out. I actually got reminded of the Jack the Ripper suspect. Is it Thomas Neil Crean? When he was about to be hanged, he apparently, as the gallows were falling or what have you, he screamed out, "I am Jack." And everyone took that to mean that he was confessing to being Jack the Ripper. But of course, it's been proven since that he just couldn't have been Jack the Ripper. So this is what I mean. People love to
100%.
Make these veiled confessions on their deathbed. And it's like a friend of mine, Tracy, who's also part of the community, who works in a nursing environment, says people on their deathbed say the craziest of things, you know, especially when there's a bit of dementia and all that sort of thing going on. So we can't take it so to heart. Apparently the daughter is neurodivergent. She's autistic and so forth. So I can understand how she is taking what her father is saying quite literally and so forth. So I don't feel any animosity towards that story because of that. I can understand sort of what's gone around about it, but I don't want to take up too much more time talking about
no, this is all good points. The Australia people love Jack the Ripper. Well, Dion's a Kiwi from New Zealand. Summer Cooper Vortex 2 all watched In Search of with Leonard Nimoy and got them hooked on Jack the Ripper, Cooper, and Zodiac. Well, I mean, if you're in Australia, who cares about Jack the Ripper? Ned Kelly, baby. Bush Ranger, the outlaw. That's my guy. But
he's considered a bit of a legend in these parts, old mate Ned Kelly. We love our heroes, like the Robin Hood type heroes over here, you know, the harmless criminals sort of thing.
That's a big thing in Sicily as well. Less so on the harmless, but but definitely some outlaw Robin Hood figures in Sicily. All right, we'll get back on point. So this is an expert level master episode of Z Files, guys. So you're going to hear us refer to these file numbers that Dion was referring to, and then he'll kind of enlighten us. So after you mentioned the 3 categories, D, after the forensics of prints, you had the number 205.
Well, no, what we'll do first, I'll just briefly cover those 3 topics in a bit more detail.
Go for it.
And especially first the latent fingerprints. What I want to do is give a summary of all of the relevant serials that dealt with latent fingerprints in this case so that we know exactly what the FBI were dealing with. Because it is a reflection of what the state were dealing with, and it just gives a brief history of those submissions to the FBI of the prints, so we know what ones are on file and how many they have on file. So the first submission, actual paper submission, August the 6th, Vallejo Police Department requested that the debut of Zodiac letter be processed for latent fingerprints. Now, they'd already sent copies of the Z408, their copy of that, plus the San Francisco Examiner and Chronicle ones. But the debut of Zodiac letter, they sent the original evidence of that to the FBI, because at that stage, the FBI actually had jurisdiction over the communications because it was a threatening letter. So they took that original, and what happens is they actually found a print on it. They actually found 2 latent prints. So the FBI found one latent print of value on page 2 and one latent print of value on page 3 of the debut of Zodiac letter. What value they are, we don't know, and that'll be a common theme. But that's just what they found, and that's what they have on file as original evidence.
I like that.
Now, yeah, so they've got that. Now, a few days later, they tested the concerned citizen card. I think you guys will know which one that is. That was a card sent in which contained a key for the Z408, and it turned up around about the same time the hardened solution was being made public. And it was what the FBI said, quote, substantially accurate. It didn't say perfectly accurate, because it wasn't. It was substantially accurate. Whether that was Zodiac or not was up for discussion, but the FBI found a latent palm print on the envelope of that original submission of the concerned citizen card letter. Sorry, yeah. And now on October the 10th, now this is October the 10th, just a day before the Paul Stein attack and less than 2 weeks after the Lake Berryessa attack, Napa County Sheriff's Department sent a 3-page letter to the FBI requesting that the latent fingerprints that they had found off the Carmen gear and also at the phone booth in the Napa that Zodiac used to call the police with. And that 3-page report is very hard to read. We can't really see a lot of the information on that. But what we can deduce is that Napa sent these prints, like Randall sent the prints to the FBI to check them against some suspects that had obviously come into the radar at that time. And keep in mind, of course, that we hadn't had the Stein murder yet. We hadn't had those prints in this case. So the suspects being checked against the prints at the moment at the FBI were only being checked against the ones found on the communications mailed in, the Z408 debut letter, and the concerned citizen card, and the Napa County prints. So that was where we were at that stage of the investigation.
Sure.
Now, October the 17th, San Francisco Police Department forward copies of the latents found on the Stein letter. And that's the letter, of course, that Zodiac sent on the 13th of October, or postmarked 13th October, that contained a piece of Paul Stein's shirt in it. So they actually found latent prints on that, and they submitted those to the FBI. Now, this is when we start to get San Francisco's involvement into the investigation, of course, more as a murder investigation, because they actually became involved in the Zodiac investigation when the letters turned up at the Chronicle and the Examiner. A lot of people don't realize that, but San Francisco took charge of those letters, and they forwarded them to the Vallejo Police Department. But on the 17th, they sent the latent prints that they found on the Stein letter, and they requested those prints be compared to the prints already on file. Just a few days later, they submitted the cab prints, and these are the prints that were found on Paul Stein's taxi cab, which includes the ones found obviously on your door frame, on the dashboard, and all over the place. There was more than one. Let's kill that little bit of misinformation now. There was more than one latent bloody print found at these scenes. There were several, and the quality of these prints is arguable, and we'll get to that a bit later. But yeah, that was what was submitted. Now, we don't get another FBI involvement in latent fingerprints in this case until July the 31st, 1970. And basically, this is a request to check all latent prints on file against each other. Hang on. Let me just go back. July the 31st. This is when the San Francisco Police Department found latent prints on the little list letter. Now, we all know which letter that is. That's the one where Zodiac goes off in his little Mikado thing. They found, I think it was 8 or 9, or it might be 9 latent fingerprints on this letter. Now, this is very interesting because with that submission, we also have a letter from the SFPD technician that found a similarity between the left ring latent fingerprint found on the little list letter and the left ring latent fingerprint found on the Paul Stein taxi cab. Now, this is most researchers know about this little similarity that's been found. Now, in this particular serial, we'll get into this a little bit later on when I dive into it, but 139, we are missing a couple of pages from that serial, and those pages are the letter that Billy Hamlet, the SFPD technician, sent to the FBI in support of his conclusion that there was a similarity in the fingerprints here. I've been trying desperately to get hold of this paperwork because I think it could explain a heck of a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And I've been also tried to get in touch with Billy Hamlet, the technician. Unfortunately, he died 6 months after this report was made. So, sadly. Anyway, moving on. After that, the next.
Jay keeps asking me about the Zodiac watch, but it's getting some reflection there, so you guys can't really see it.
Oh, okay. The old Z watch. Yeah.
It's blurry.
What were you doing in 1969 there, Roscoe?
It's a Granville. It's modern. It's not a Seawolf, right? No.
Granville. Oh my God, Granville. Where does that name ring? Oh, yeah. Anyway, February 1974 is the next we hear, and this is an interesting one because basically this is a request from SFPD for the FBI to collect all of the latent fingerprints they have been sent, copies of, and their own original ones into one, and ascertain the quality of those prints to see if they are good enough to put into any automated fingerprinting systems. Because as you know, in 1974, they were just starting to bring AFIS in and some of the other automated fingerprint systems rather than the classification systems that they were using. So this report here states that they had 39 latent fingerprints, 11 latent palm prints, 2 latent impressions of unknown origin, and 10 additional latents that were identified using elimination prints. So that was what the FBI had on file in the Zodiac case in 1974. And it's interesting that they mention these 10 latent prints that have been eliminated by elimination prints. I'd love to know the nature of that, whether the FBI were able to do that or what have you with the elimination. But yeah, we're not sure about that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So that's regarding first responders to the scene, right?
Yeah, yeah. You have to assume standard operating procedures determine that elimination prints are going to be taken. The Paul Avery report specifically states that elimination prints were taken from people at that crime scene. So you have to assume that. And this is where I also stand on the whole Patrick Robbins scenario about how Lindsay was supposed to have gone in and touched the cab and to position Paul Stein or what have you. And you will never convince me that they did not take elimination prints from the Robbins kids. I'm sorry, but you will not.
I would love to know that myself. I mean, according to Palisetti, he stopped them before they got to it and he quarantined the scene. So I tend to lean towards that being standard operating procedure.
Absolutely. Yep. No, absolutely. That's what Palisetti said. And I never ever take what these guys say at face value because you just can't, because obviously a lot of stuff gets contradicted. But when you piece it together with the rest of the evidence, and especially what's in here, the documentation and all the insinuations from previous reports about these fingerprints and the confidence that SFPD had in them, in those latent prints, there's only one conclusion I can come up with. But anyway, the FBI did that. They collected all their fingerprints. I've just detailed what ones they had, the quantity of them. Anyway, they came back and basically their conclusion was that they couldn't make a full set of your 10 prints, because basically how they do it is they classify your fingers. Like if you look at your right hand, right, your thumb, that's 1, and then your index finger is 2, 3, 4, 5, and go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 like that. So you've got your 10 fingers, and that's the basis for their classification. They couldn't do that. The FBI could not determine which fingers most of these latent fingerprints were coming from. So there was no way they could compile a proper set of fingerprints to put in any automated fingerprint system. So if the Zodiac prints are in AFIS, they're not from the FBI. That's about as much as I can tell you. I don't know where the state agencies sit on that, but the FBI were asked to collaborate or collect their latent fingerprints, and they came up with they're not good enough quality. That's another
that's come up before. I've heard that mentioned. Real quick, just a question for Fire
Sorry,
Pixie.
I'm looking at
The shell casings that they could recover at whatever scenes ever tested for fingerprints. I know DNA wasn't a thing back then, but fingerprints were. Anything you've seen on the casings?
Sorry, can we go through it? Sorry, I was looking at the comments there. Sorry, can we ask that again?
Yeah,
I didn't.
I'll bring it back up. She's asking about prints off of the shell casings, Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Presidio Heights.
Yeah. I think because of the way they handled evidence back then too, and remembering back in those days, criminology was a lot more archaic. Whether or not they tried to get fingerprints off the shell casings, we don't know because it's not in the reports. So we'd basically be speculating there. But I'm assuming if it was part of the standard operating procedures, they would have done that, because you'd have to assume that when he's loading up the weapon, he's not doing it with a gloved hand. But yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And these days they do that, don't they? They actually look to lift latents off shell casings. Whether or not they did back in those days, I'm not sure. But all I know is that through the FBI systems, there certainly wasn't. The only latents that we've got from the FBI that I know about, as I say, from the letters, the crime scenes themselves, surfaces, and the phone booths, and that's basically it.
Yeah. I mean, all the surfaces that a suspect would have been expected to touch. And again, as Dion was saying, there's nothing for us to know. You buy some ammo back then. Is the gun shop guy handling every single one of those shells and helping you load your gun? Maybe helping you because that when you buy a firearm here in the States today, you go through a test like, hey, show me that Dion knows this. He was in the service, but show me that you know how to load and unload this. I mean, that's if you can't pass that test, right, you shouldn't own a firearm in any country. Right? Let me just say that. But, like we said, late 60s, early 60s, these shells could have been handled by 100 people before Zodiac loaded them in his gun. So it wouldn't necessarily be a smoking gun, so to speak.
Oh, we take a lot of it for granted these days about how things were done back then. We think it was, a lot of us tend to, and I do it the same as well. We sometimes fall into that habit of assuming that things were done back then similarly to what they are done today. Totally different, completely and utterly different. As I said, they had no idea what they were dealing with when the Zodiac came along. Most murders at that stage were done between people that knew each other. There's usually a connection between victim and killer, which I guess is why a lot of people think that the Zodiac and his victims had connections as well, which I personally don't believe. But and so, crime solving was a little bit easier for the police then. Yeah.
Real quick, at the same time, if Zodiac knows that trend that the vast majority of crimes are committed between associates or associated parties that know each other, the very obvious against the grain action is to do it randomly.
100%, what I mean? Mate. Yeah. As I said, he was a bit of a mold breaker for a lot of things. Yeah. He bridged the gap between the old style of criminology and that new breed of serial killer that came out in the 1970s that looked at the Zodiac case and said, this guy wasn't very good. He failed to kill some of his victims. He sent in all this bloody evidence and they still couldn't catch him. So, hey, we can go around killing all these teenage hitchhikers, dump the body somewhere to never be found, leave no evidence and get away with it like so many of them did.
Yep.
And that was what I mean about the Zodiac being a bit before his time and the investigators just not knowing what they were dealing with. It's easy to sit here in hindsight and fling dirt on the law enforcement, but the way they were doing things. But that's just the way they did it. Like investigating murders was a bit more, like I said, that was archaic. That's how they did it. And stranger murders were rare, let alone 5 of them with a guy running around terrorizing the place through the mail. I mean,
right.
Gee, you can sort of see, yeah.
And from Cheryl, not to throw off your rhythm, but
that's right, mate. Yeah.
To the prints. So similarly, do we know how many points connect?
Right, and I was actually going to get into that as well, and I may as well get into that now. Actually, Cheryl. Hi, by the way, Cheryl. Good to see you again, mate. I'm proposing that the similarity that was found between the 2 left ring latent fingerprints on the crime scene, the Paul Stein taxi cab, and the left ring, the little list letter, is that if you take, for example, you look at your finger and you imagine an area along your finger and touching a surface with the top of that part of your finger and then the lower part of that finger. There's a possibility that you will touch that surface with the same part of that finger on the different surfaces, but not with the other parts of your finger. It's hard to explain. I've got it visual, and I'll I'll break that down eventually on my site at some stage. But what I think the similarity pertains to is that the technician has found points of similarity in this in-between area on a print that may have overlapped between crime scene and letter, but not enough for an to be able to say, look, it's the same. There's just not enough points of similarity. Let's see if we can, do some more testing. Now, the FBI's standards of testing fingerprints may be different to what the state are doing. So by their methods and their hypotheses on points matching and all the rest of it, they've concluded that there was no match in their report. So that's why I'm so keen to see what Billy Hamlet's 2-page letter to the FBI says, because it's all about this print match, and that will be what explains what the point difference might be, Cheryl. And that's exactly why I'm trying so damn hard to get that information. But we will get to that. We probably won't get to it now because we're running through the time here. But if you want, Ross, I'll just quickly run through the latents again, the end of the latent stuff. So
yeah, whatever your best points are, man, it's your show.
Yeah. So the next time we hear after this mass latent fingerprint check, May 1974, Riverside Police Department submitted the confession letter and the envelope for that, and the 3 had to die letters to the FBI. Why they submitted that in May 1974, I'm not sure. This is when, of course, just after the Exorcist letter had come back in, and the Zodiac case was starting to pick up again in the 1974, sort of around that time. And Riverside sent their material into the FBI to get checked via handwriting and all the rest of it, which Sherwood Morrill had already done in 1970. But the FBI were doing it 4 years later. And they checked it for fingerprints. And it's quite funny because the FBI found, I don't know what we can make of this, but they found a fingerprint or a latent fingerprint on the RPD's copy of the confession letter. And they also found a latent fingerprint on the actual letter itself of RPD's copy of the had to die letter. They didn't say anything about the matching. I assume they're not very good quality, but honestly, how good are these prints going to be when it's been 4 years since Riverside received them and sending them to the FBI? How good are they going to be? How many people have handled these things? So,
I'm interested in that latent print on the Bates had to die letter because the recent I'll call it the press release in quotes.
Yes.
Press release, because try understanding it. But even if it's bad quality, as you said, you'd think there would be enough correlation of the supposed guy who admitted it to take a look at that and be like, all right, well, even if it's not perfect, it's close enough. Like it semi matches. Of course, we never hear anything about that, so
as we know, RPD aren't exactly forthcoming with things, and the ambiguous nature of the press release they gave when this all went down. I mean, we're all still none the wiser, aren't we, really? We're no closer to any truth. RPD are no help to anything. And that's why I've distanced myself a little bit from that case as well now. There's just, if the police department themselves don't care, why should we? I mean, it's just, But anyway, what I have done with this report in May 1974, it indicated that the FBI also submitted copies of the latent fingerprints they found on Sherry Joe Bates's VW. Now, these are the greasy fingerprints that they couldn't find. They couldn't eliminate the killer as being the owner of.
Yeah, distributor.
And what I actually found is that they got allocated a different serial number for that submission and a different latent case number. So I have Freedom of Information Act requested that very recently, and I'm still waiting to hear back from that. But I got a positive reply. Apparently, the information is in the indices and they're just searching through it. So we stand by, community. We may be in line for a little bit of unique Zodiac information. Fingers crossed.
That'd be nice.
I've got my so many fingers crossed. I mean, it's not funny.
I got you, chat. I'm going to send out Dion's inbox to everybody so you guys can just keep bombarding him until that update comes in.
Go nuts, man. Get everyone to destroy. Log jam me, because as I said, I've been inactive. I'm getting active again, and I'll reheat up these links eventually. you know me. One day, bro. One day. And anyway, February the 17th, 1986, we have to wait till our next FBI involvement with the latent fingerprints. And that is a SFPD request for all of the latent fingerprints in the Zodiac case to be sent to the SFPD from the FBI. And not surprisingly, this is basically the month after Robert Graysmith's Zodiac comes out. So that, of course, provokes another wave of activity in the case, more suspects to check against. So SFPD figure, rather than pester the FBI, we'll get all of the prints from their files, because they contain obviously all of Nappa's prints, all of Vallejo PD's prints, all of Solano's, but there's none from Solano in the FBI files that I can find. So basically from those other jurisdictions, so that they don't. So that was how they got hold of those prints to check against all the suspects that they were developing after Graysmith's book came out, which obviously Alan would have come up in that conversation then too. But 5 years later, obviously Alan comes up again, and January 1991, when VPD make a request for all of the Zodiac latent prints on file to the FBI. Same deal, basically. Arthur Lee Allen has come onto the radar in January 1991. VPD also, while they're investigating Allen, they also start investigating Lawrence Kane. He becomes a suspect around this time as well. So they get all the FBI's latent prints on file to check against them and other suspects. But ironically, they still submit, Allen and Kane for check against the latent fingerprints at the FBI. And it's quite funny because in January, VPD made the request. It wasn't until April 1991 that the FBI finally got off their backsides and actually sent copies of these latent prints to the VPD. So by the time that had actually happened, VPD had already struck Allen off as a suspect through the fingerprints. The FBI had already checked Allen and Kane out and against the fingerprints for a no match and all the rest of that. So yeah, why VPD even bothered?
That's a big point. I want the chat and the audience to understand that, especially with the recent ALA emergence. ALA proponents love to say law enforcement doesn't have Zodiac's prints. Okay, whatever. But VPD and the FBI had written them off at this point, and it's only 91, 92, as Dion has said. So, I mean,
yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. You know what I mean? You could stick to there's no DNA, there's no fingerprints, blah, blah, blah. And I carry on, D, but I do want to ask you about the concerned citizen card when you get a second.
That's cool. I just want to quickly add that with Allen, the district attorney at the time, Mike Nail, said through the media that they probably weren't going to charge Allen. He didn't think charges were going to come out of it. And the reason he probably said that was because he just didn't match any of the physical evidence. And several of the witnesses says it wasn't him. If you're going to go to a trial, a court of law, and prove that someone was a killer, it pays to not have that suspect be denied by the physical evidence in the case, because then you have to start introducing problems with the physical evidence. And then it's not about the Zodiac anymore, is it? Right. There's just no way they were going to prosecute the guy with the evidence that they had on him. I mean, I know people like to point at the bombs and where he was. I mean, like, there are a lot of good points about Allen, sure, but there's a lot of good points about some of the other suspects that you've never heard of. So go figure, man. There's some suspects in some of these files that will blow your socks off. And there's information that we don't even know about some of these guys yet. So if you like Allen for Zodiac, that's cool. That's your thing. I'm not going to go too much further on that, though. Employ the whole "if I've got nothing nice to say" thing. Don't say anything.
No, it's fine. But I think the point stands for Allen and the rest of the mainstream suspects as well. Although no disrespect to Kane. I mean, I understand the line of thinking, as Dion said earlier, when Destry Hines entered the Zap. We should preface with Destry is the son of Detective Harvey Hines.
Sorry, I meant to say that. Yeah, Destry is the son of Harvey Hines, who introduced Kane as a suspect back in the day. But Destry, he's a good researcher, though. He remains objective, even though he is a believer in Kane. And that's why we got on so well, because he didn't chuck it down anyone's throat. Excuse me. He remained objective, which I like in a researcher. I like if you have an idea of what's going on, that's great. But as long as you don't let that consume your research and your ideas on the evidence, it shouldn't lead you. The evidence should lead us to what's going on, not the other way around. Because human beings can lie, they can manipulate, they can misread things, they can misinterpret things. Evidence never lies, guys. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I want to shoot down the old every law enforcement agency had tunnel vision and they were all looking at Allen. Well, Dion pretty much just told you that they weren't. I mean, a DA announcement, VPD, and FBI. What more did you mean? And this is the point I've been bringing up to people I've been arguing with on Facebook. You really think VPD, Napa, SFPD, and FBI all had the exact same opinion when they have completely different agents? Where like even Detective Hines, like he had his own suspect. So how does that fit into, well, everybody's looking at Alan? You know, it really doesn't. You know what I mean? So like, and that's just one example. You know?
Yeah, and Graysmith will have us believe that Alan was the only guy they were looking at too. It's all about perception. It's all about how things are perceived. But I'm about to get into the suspects aspect of this to just show you guys that no, it wasn't just Alan they were looking at. And yes, there was a theme of what they were looking at. But what I'm going to do, I'll just finish off quickly with the latents anyway. They struck Alan and Kane off, obviously, in March 1991. 38 of the latent prints did not match Alan, and 37 of the latent prints did not match Kane's. And by that, some of the latent prints, obviously, that they had on file for Kane and Alan weren't complete sets. And that's why we had that little discrepancy there. And I know that because I've been looking at the ALSA sheets. Now, if anyone's gone through the PDF FBI files, you notice there's these things called ALSA sheets, and it's just this big, about 100 of these crazy looking forms of fingerprint stuff, and it's all these codes and numbers, and it just looks like a big mishmash of crazy FBI talk. I've been through those, and I'm starting to get an understanding of them, and that's what they've taught me, is that Kane and Alan both had their prints on file at the FBI, but they didn't have complete sets. They only had certain parts of their fingerprints. And in some of the FBI files, it actually specifically states in some of these examinations, we need more complete sets of prints of the suspect to make a better conclusion on our tests, which says to me that a lot of the suspects that were being sent through to the FBI for examination, they might not be able to be ruled out because the fingerprints that they had that were being tested, like, you know what I said, the FBI couldn't make a full set of fingerprints because they were fragmented and not good quality. So what about when the suspect's fingerprints are being, you know, everyone takes their prints differently. So maybe if the outsides of the fingers, as the FBI have said, were being compared, we might be able to get somewhere, but they weren't. So, and often they didn't have palm prints on file either. So if a suspect's palm didn't have a palm print, they weren't able to compare it. So there's another reason why a lot of these guys that are in the files that could have been ruled out might not necessarily be. But because Alan and Kane got so much heat, you know, that we know that the state guys looked at them hard and the FBI guys did as well. You know, they know better than us. We don't know anything, as I said. So you have to put faith in what they were doing. So, yeah. But anyway, that's basically the latent fingerprint situation at the FBI. They had 39 latents, 11 palms, 2 impressions. And that's what they've got on file in this case, basically speaking, from the files there.
So, given the latent off of the concerned citizen letter, because I don't recall if you and I have ever discussed this in private, who do you think wrote the concerned citizen letter? And furthermore, the fact that they were looking at the latent on it, does that insinuate that the FBI thought that it could be Zodiac, or they're at least open to the possibility?
I wouldn't rule the Zodiac out from it. And the reason I say that is because, and it's funny that when the FBI made their conclusion on the key for this whole thing, they said it was substantially accurate. They didn't say it was perfect. Now, the fact that it did have errors in it, we all know the Zodiac loved to mislead and he loved to manipulate things through the media. And if this was him, this would tie in with that. You know, he doesn't want to make it a perfect solution, but he wants to have a bit of a dig and say, oh, haha, you know, here's the solution, but the rest of it you guys can figure out, sort of thing. The print they actually found was a palm print. It was a latent palm print. And the issue with it, Ross, is that it was found on the envelope and not the actual inside material. That to me is a little bit more controversial because on the envelope, we don't know how many people have handled this stuff. People can inadvertently put their hand on something that they don't think is important. But the fact that the FBI got possession of this as an original material, you'd have to think they'd know what they're doing. And obviously at this stage, when you've got letters coming in to the papers, they're going to be on the lookout for making sure that they don't handle it too much for evidence. And so, well, you'd like to think they would. Right. I know things were different back in 1969, and I guess it's a little bit optimistic to think that the guys in the media outlets that were receiving these letters weren't going to be putting their filthy little hands all over it, you know. But I guess they did because they didn't know any better, like I said. So, yeah, that's where I sit on that, mate. I know I'm kind of sitting on the fence and saying it could be him and he can't be ruled out. But Yeah, I also think that it's quite possible it could just be someone else that's writing in anonymously and saying, "Hey, I want to solve it, but I don't want you to know who I am," because people who insinuate and put themselves into investigations can sometimes get made into suspects, as again I'll show you soon.
Well, not only that, the law enforcement used to publish victims' names and addresses back then, so I could understand
100%.
wanting to stay out of the the public sphere on that.
How bloody crazy is it? Oh, Mike Mougeot, victim who just got shot by a guy, lives at 8. Let's just get his address out there so the killer has got a blueprint to go and find him again. Like,
right?
Hell, so, man.
Very different times, people. Well, very different times.
Like I said, things were so different in those days, and it's easy to kind of drop into what we're doing in the here and now. So easy to do that. Things were different. We need to keep that in mind. So anyway, that's the whole latent fingerprints thing. So what I'm going to do now,
I love it.
The second branch of the whole 3 thematics, we've been through the forensics a little bit. So what I'll do now is I'll just briefly go through some of the suspects that the FBI checked into more than just a little bit. They were given multiple lists of suspects from San Francisco Police Department when they were checking out mental hospitals, looking at ex-military veterans, and also ex-military veterans that have been trained in cryptography, that have been serving in the army, that had done courses on cryptography. So they were actually investigating the case like that. They were going into presupposed ideas of what they felt the Zodiac may have been interested in or employed by, and actually doing mass investigations. And all through the FBI files, you're going to see lists and lists and lists of suspects from, as I say, from state hospitals, prisons, military establishments, people that they have identified that fit the criteria and have sent through to the FBI just to have a check, sort of a thing. There's thematics. You can see sort of on the timeline where and when they were investigating things. But early on in the investigation, there was a guy that came under the radar, and I'm sure most Zodiac researchers have heard of Tommy Southern. And he's in the police reports. He got investigated by both Vallejo and Napa County Sheriff's Department. So he's in one of 2 suspects that I know of that are in 2 different sets of police reports for the Zodiac case. The other one is Rocky Gann, who I'm sure other people know about as well. Now, this guy, Tommy Southern, he was born in Texas in 1944. He was actually turned in by a friend of his wife, and he apparently told his wife that he had killed a woman called Olivia and her baby in 1968, and he'd buried them in his backyard somewhere. So, here he is telling stories about killing people, getting rid of the bodies and all the rest of that. He was an inpatient at the Napa State Hospital in June 1969, and it was actually Vallejo Police Department that committed him to the mental hospital there. He was apparently very violent to his wife. He was and he was impotent as well. He couldn't get it up, basically. So they had a very checkered sex life, mentally unstable. He was, as I said, went to the hospital for being mentally disturbed, as they say. VPD acquired copies of his job and leave applications and tested his handwriting and his fingerprints, and that came back in no dice. What happened with this guy, they tested him before the Stein scene with the Napa prints, and they also later on, once the Paul Stein taxi cab and letter latents came to the FBI from San Francisco Police Department, they rechecked Tommy Southern against those prints as well. There's actually 2 submissions for him to be checked against the prints because new ones kept coming in. So keep this in mind too, guys. These suspects weren't just being checked against one set of prints and then ditched. As new prints kept coming into these establishments, these suspects were being checked against those as well. And that's important to know. They didn't just get put on the back burner. So, yeah, he got found to be a no dice. And he's quite tall too. Tommy Southern, I believe, was 6'2". And, so he was quite tall for the Zodiac Killer. He was quite thin too, I think. We actually got in touch with his family as part of the Zodiac Archive project when we were researching him. And researcher Gina Clark, who I'm sure a lot of people know, when she was with the Zap there, we managed to get a hold of a picture of Tommy Southern that no one else has seen from his son. And in exchange, we were able to provide him and his other siblings with pictures of Tommy that we had come across in our research. And that was brilliant because it was just, us helping out this guy. And Tommy was their hero. They didn't have a lot to do with him growing up. So he was sort of like their hero. All the pictures of him they had were him in a flash jacket, looking tough and all the rest of that. And so it was really nice to be able to provide them with some detail about him and very amiably with the family. So, but he was ruled out by the evidence as well. Another suspect that we came across, and again, people will know about this guy, is a guy called David Odell Martin. Now, this guy is a bit of a nutter, and he can't be Zodiac. He was conclusively proven not to be. On November the 21st, 1969, there's a phone call to police by his wife, Geraldine, and she said that this guy was going absolutely haywire. He was, attacking his daughter, and he was causing all sorts of chaos. So the police went round to their house, and they found this guy, David Martin. He had his 11-year-old daughter, Kimberly, and he had his hand on her throat and a gun to her, knife to her throat. And he was threatening to kill her if the cops came any closer. So what happened is the cops dealt with the situation. They shot this guy. And while he was on the ground and the police officers were containing him, he screamed out, "It's me. I am the Zodiac Killer." So, of course, as soon as someone says that, we start thinking again, the whole Thomas Neal Cream with Jack the Ripper, "I am Jack." The whole John Treffel, "I am the Zodiac Killer." This guy confessing basically on his death throes, "I am the Zodiac." So the FBI were asked to check him out. He failed all the evidence tests again. And this guy was a nutter. He was high as a kite on the drugs and all of that, So he was another suspect that was investigated. Another guy that came up in the files in, I think, 1975. Here's a real interesting guy by the name of Owen Joseph Kilbane. Now, Owen Kilbane, him and his brother, was it Johnny? It was Johnny Kilbane, a younger brother. These guys ran the prostitution racket in Cleveland, right? Owen called himself the father of prostitution. This guy was a real character. He committed his first murder in 1963 as a 16-year-old, and he was sent to prison at Mansfield as an adult. And he hardened up as a criminal while he was in prison. It didn't rehabilitate him. He just became a better criminal. He came out, got involved in the prostitution ring in Cleveland, and he was the man in the 1970s doing that. And he used to run around with the Zodiac cross circle symbol on his car, on his doormats, on his mailbox, and on some of his clothing. He used to wear this cross circle symbol around. So, of course, people would look at him and say, "Oh, he must be the Zodiac Killer. Look, he's got this bloody symbol going on." So basically, he got submitted in to the FBI as well, because an informant, sent into to the FBI to say, "Hey, this guy's got these symbols, going on." And they investigated this guy a little bit. He was a real character, this Owen Kilbane. He had a pet tarantula, which is pretty out there. And get this, he bred piranhas. I'm not sure what kind of a logistical setup you would need in your little mansion to be able to breed piranhas, but obviously this guy wasn't short of money and a little bit of deviancy. So yeah, clearly
that's interesting.
Breeding piranhas.
That's far out.
Now this guy here, he was also implicated in the death of a judge's wife. Now, what happened? A judge of the court in Cleveland, he was having an affair with another woman, and he approached the Kilbane brothers and said to them, "I would like my wife taken out so I can be with this other woman." So the Kilbanes organized a guy to kill his wife, and that led back to them, and they got convicted of that, blah, 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 and all the rest of this. And the judge also got convicted because he ended up marrying that woman 3 months later. So it just looked dodgy as. So these guys are real, just real all over the place sort of guys. And he was a suspect. Of course, he didn't match the evidence, no fingerprints, no letters. And the thing is, he had ties to California, and they could place him there at certain points of 1969, but he never really spent a lot of time there. And the thing is, he was more of a contract out kind of a killer in his later days when he was the father of prostitution. So, yeah, there was that guy. He got checked as well. And the other suspect I just want to briefly touch on, I actually made a video about this guy in my YouTube channel, which I've rebranded my YouTube channel. It's now called the Zodiac Archive Project for anyone looking for that.
Yeah, we'll get the link below in the description.
Yeah, someone get the link for that. The guy I looked at, I called him, I think it might have been Rob Valentine or something like that. But the guy's name, and I can say his name now, even though I'm pretty sure he's still alive. His name is in the files. Robert Allen Violet. And this guy was a bit of a character too. And he's an example of someone who went through the system for years and years and years and years, but actually managed to rehabilitate. He came out the other side and started a family and all of the rest of that. Now,
sure,
this guy here did his first murder in 1954. He actually killed, he'd joined the Air Force and he'd gone AWOL from the Air Force. He was a bit sort of stuffed in the head. He went to work on a ranch in 1954 and he actually killed the manager, the guy who was in charge of the ranch. And this guy's wife went down into the basement and found, this guy, Robert Violet, sitting there with a rifle and her dead husband on the ground. So she ran away and locked herself in the bathroom. And Violet took off in their car and he ended up getting arrested by the police, in another state. And so they found him, they committed him, they sent him to trial. He was deemed unfit to stand trial because he was cuckoo. So they sent him to the state hospital in Yankton. And he ended up escaping, of course. And this went on for several years. Put him in the state hospital, escape, recapture, send him back. It wasn't until 1959 they actually declared him fit enough to stand trial, which he did. He was found guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced to 30 years in prison for 6 already served in that state hospital. I mean, he was escaping from it. So, 6 years, what's that? Apparently, he kept going between the South Dakota Penitentiary and the Yankton State Hospital because he kept feigning his, I'm nuts. So he went from the jail to the mental hospital, and every time he went to the mental hospital, he escaped. And it would just be a rinse repeat. Back to the mental hospital, back to the penitentiary, back to the mental hospital, escape, rinse repeat. He was apparently free during the Zodiac reign. I'm not sure the exact years he was free and on the run. He was using aliases. He was a violent man. And yeah, he was in the area at the time, apparently. So that's why they were looking at this guy. And they actually looked at him twice. He first came into the Zodiac case, and I think about 1975, his handwriting first appears in the FBI files. And we can't find a copy of that specific handwriting. It's not part of their releases. But the K-16, the next time he comes on the radar in 1979, he has some handwriting samples that we can see there. And funnily enough, the FBI concluded that he could not be eliminated as a suspect because of his handwriting. And they specifically said that if this suspect continues to be a good suspect in this case, please send through some more of his handwriting, because what we have right now looks okay. That's what they said about this guy. And we have to keep in mind, though, that doesn't mean it's a match. It just means that there were characteristics of the handwriting that made it so that they couldn't rule him out, basically.
Now, as you said before, I don't know that Alan ever even got that, hey, his handwriting is interesting. You know what I mean? Like
literally nothing. Yeah, literally nothing, Roscoe.
They make such a big deal about it. And again, you look at the files and it's like you think it would have came up more if that's the
Look,
case.
guys, you can toss all of the dirt you like on the forensic evidence and the police files and the FBI files and what they say, but the general theme of these files and the official documentation is that the evidence is good. But as I said, it comes with a caveat. The evidence is good, but it's not good enough.
Right.
It's good enough for inclusion. As I keep saying, it's good enough for inclusion. Sure. It's not good enough for identification. And that is that.
100%.
If you have a match to these fingerprints or latent fingerprints, you're going to need a please explain. And in some of the cases with the elimination prints, there's an explanation already there. So, as I said, I'm trying to get hold of this information about the Sherry Joe Bates fingerprints as well, and let's see what we can come up with that. So, anyway, this guy Violet, he got his prints didn't match, and he was eventually cleared as a suspect on a number of reasons, not least of all that he was only 150 pounds and that he had several scars on his face. I won't go into great detail, but none of the let's just make this clear. None of the witnesses in the Zodiac case ever said there were scars on the Zodiac killer. None of them. I know there are some people that like to insinuate that their suspect is the Zodiac because he had a scar like the Zodiac had. No one said the Zodiac had a scar, guys. Let's just clear that up right now.
Unbeknownst to Gary Francis Post fans who claim that the composite sketch forehead wrinkles are in fact forehead scars, but that's the only place where that's ever been stated.
Sorry, Postbusters.
Hey, real quick, I gotta ask the chat. Can you still see me on the cam, Dion? Because it's on mine.
I cannot see you, my brother.
Okay, it's totally shot on mine. I don't know.
Oh, is it? Okay. I did wonder about that. I thought you might have gone for a bit of a skip out on me.
No, I when I drop it and bring it back here, you can carry on. You're going to still be in. I'm just going to try to restart the room.
No worries, mate. I'll just continue on because it's getting on, and I've been.
No, you're good. Do your thing. Give me 1 second.
So I am now going to just quickly go over the informants / miscellaneous stuff. Oh, hello. Now I've got. Oh, there we go. Oh, hello.
Yeah, carry on.
There we are.
Let me get rid of this.
Sorry, I haven't been keeping up with the chat. I've been sort of looking at the at what I've been going through here. So we can have what happened to those busters from Mr. Flack Nasty? Well, they didn't get their documentary, mate. That's the thing. They were fishing for a documentary, a big story, like a lot of these people are. And when they didn't get it, they got a bit pissy. And I think what you'll find is that it comes in cycles. Don't be surprised in a few months' time when we're all quiet and everything's fine and no one's brought their daddy into the equation yet. We'll get a post from one of these guys going, oh, hi, don't forget Gary Post. He's a brilliant suspect because his name was in the code. Yeah,
100%. And I can go further. When they were done solving DB Cooper with Rackstraw, that one's for you, Jay Weiss. Then they solved Gary Francis Post's Zodiac, and then they solved Jimmy Hoffa. So that explains where they went. They just went and solved on the next, as Dion said here, the CIA, the FBI, and every other law enforcement agency couldn't. But the case breakers, man, those guys are on fire. Definitely bring your cold case to them.
It must have been the 1988 Jamaican bobsled team that they added into it. Gee, yeah, man, we just solved the case, man.
That's the fastest. That's the fastest major cold case solving in U.S. history. I mean, I'm surprised more documentaries.
See them over here. We've got a few cold cases we could get you working on, and we've got a few police investigators that you can come and collaborate with as well, guys. Don't worry about that. The sort of guys that love planting physical evidence and creating convoluted theories to come up with bullshit ideas. You'd fit in well.
Yeah. You want a suspect? We can confirmation bias him all day. Anyway,
100%, mate. I got a few of them for you.
Carry on, D.
Right. So here a couple of interesting informants. This is the third aspect of the FBI files that I created a timeline on, and some of the more interesting. There's a few comical ones in here too. Like there was a guy who wrote into the FBI asking if he could have a copy of J. Edgar Hoover's fingerprints. and he, at the same time, he also requested all information that they had on the Zodiac Killer case. And I think he also asked for an autograph as well or something like that. And not surprisingly, the FBI actually turned around and looked into him as a suspect. I don't know why. Gee,
what could have gone there?
Goodness me. Serial number 53. There was a guy from Missoula, Montana, contacted Montana. Again, I still don't know how to say that. Sorry, guys. Kiwi here. You're contacted the FBI on the 24th of November, 1969. He said he'd decoded the Zodiac message, which obviously is the Z340 at the stage because that is the only one unsolved. Mm-hmm. And it named a guy married to the daughter of a Missoula police captain. So, yeah, a bit controversial there. Now, the FBI replied to this guy very nicely in a letter saying that thank you very much for relating this information about this guy, but the Zodiac was active in California, not friggin' Montana. So thanks for coming. That was what they said to him. Look, if you can place him in California, come back, but he was in Montana, so we don't care.
Right. Yeah.
That was that. And this is a common thing.
Yeah, that's a note for all the Atlanta child murder suspect people. Zodiacs from Northern California. or was
Yes,
at least there?
he was he committed his crimes in the Bay Area, and he had some kind of affiliation during the time with it. There was another informant who wrote to J. Edgar Hoover to pass on that the word DES, D-E-S, which the Zodiac wrote in, I think it was the 340 card that came with that. He wrote that circle with the cross on it, and DES, Joel, and all the hyphenated months. And he, instead of DEC, he put DES. A guy contacted the police to say, look, this is a German word, and I just wanted to let you guys know that, and so the FBI were like, yeah, cheers, bro, cool. We're not going to do anything. They didn't pass it on to the state agency. They did nothing with it. They just wrote back to the guy saying, cheers, bro. That's all they did.
It's not exactly SLA means kill in Norse, right?
I mean, hello. Go to the State Department, you noddies. That's their jurisdiction. But no, people would go to the FBI because either they'd been rebuffed by the State Departments or they didn't know that the FBI didn't have jurisdiction, one or the other. It's like the dude that called the Sacramento FBI at 2:00 on the 2nd of January, 1970, claiming to be the Zodiac Killer and having just killed somebody. And of course, Sacramento got in touch with the San Francisco department, says, look, we've got this guy who's called in saying he's the Zodiac. Do you want us to do anything about it? Once again, the FBI branch in San Francisco, not our problem, bro. Who cares? Not our problem, bro. This is the theme. This is the theme, man. Everyone thinks the FBI has this big ongoing role in the Zodiac investigation. They couldn't care less, bro. They couldn't care less. May 1970.
In their defense, FBI does solve like current hot cases. So and I realize the timeline Dion's talking about is generally in the Zodiac era, but the further away it gets from 69 to 71, I'm sorry, that's just Zodiac getting further away from.
When they're able to pour all of their resources, manpower, and money into a case, then yes, they'll solve it. But in the Zodiac case, their hands were tied. They didn't have investigative jurisdiction on those murders. So
100%.
This is what I'm talking about. They couldn't do the investigative work. The only investigation that the FBI actually did into anything Zodiac related was when the identity of a suspect was in question, and they had to check the identity of that suspect. So they would contact other FBI officers around the country looking for that suspect, saying, is this our guy? Send us fingerprints so that we can check them against him to make sure we're checking the right suspect against the evidence. Because in a lot of cases, the suspect that the FBI had on file that they were being asked to check against the evidence was a different guy, same name, born in the same year, but just a different fella. So they needed to do more work to try and produce more information on the guy. So that was all the investigation they actually did. It was internal. It had nothing to do with let's investigate the Zodiac case. Everything they did was requested for them to do by the different state agencies. We need to make that perfectly clear. Yeah. Now, we also had a guy in May 1970, a man from New York contacted the FBI claiming to know Zodiac's identity. And after a few inquiries, the FBI actually managed to find out some stuff about this guy, and he became a suspect. So he got tested against the evidence, but not the guy he actually informed on. So instead of the guy he tipped over, they said, well, it can't be him, but this guy who's telling us about this guy, he could be the man. I wonder if they did that to John Chaney.
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. Damn it.
But this is what they were doing. Informants were coming forward saying this guy could be the Zodiac. I'm pretty sure he is. They weren't investigating the guy they brought forward. They were investigating the guy that came forward.
100%.
Madness, brother.
That's how it goes.
So it is the way it goes. Guy from Scottsville, New York, claiming to have an important evidence that could yield the Zodiac's identity if it was investigated properly. He said he went to the state agencies. They brushed him off. He went to the FBI. You could find his identity if you investigate this guy. The FBI's reply to him, cool, bro. Go to the state agencies. But I've already been there. I've already been to the state agencies. Cool. Go back to them. We don't care. If you've been to the state agencies, given them your evidence and been rebuffed and nothing's happening because of it, why go to the FBI? They're just going to say, go and see the state guys.
100%.
When people say they've taken their physical evidence into the FBI, I just laugh because it's like...
Yeah, we get a lot of that lately. Came up lately with the LD Hillians, you know, a guy who lived in Ohio or something, so a bit far off. But
go to the state agencies, guys. Don't waste your time going to the FBI. They don't care. You have to go to SFPD. If you've got evidence in the Zodiac case, they have the physical evidence in this case, not the FBI. They don't have
100%.
jurisdiction over it. It's like I was saying to you before, mate. If you were David Attenborough and you wanted to learn how to play guitar, you're not going to go to your garden circle friends to learn how to play guitar. You're going to go talk to David Gilmour or Steve Vai or Stevie Ray Vaughan or something like that. You're not going to talk to your garden mates. So yeah, that's what we're sort of talking about here. And of course, the other funny one was the Graysmith 340 solution in 1979.
Oh, I hate that solution with a passion.
My God. And then after that, Gareth Penn in 1981. Now, anyone that's had the pleasure of Freedom of Information Act requesting the FBI in the recent years will have gotten back just scrolls and scrolls of files of Gareth bloody Penn submissions. Honestly, in the end, the FBI got so sick of this guy, they actually had to say to him, look, if you keep pestering us, we're going to prosecute you. That's how sick of him they got.
Yeah, that guy's got brutal.
Actually going to come and knock on your friggin' door, mate, and we're going to say something if you don't stop pestering us. And Gareth Penn. And this, I have on my records here more than 250 files just on Gareth Penn submissions.
Oh,
that's basically almost a fifth of the total FBI files we have in the public domain in total. A fifth of those is taken up by Gareth Penn, guys.
That whole theory is terrible.
Yeah, it is. And you think to yourselves, the people that come out with all these crazy convoluted theories in the community now, the poor old FBI had to wear those back in the day before the internet provided that theorem, that platform for them. So go figure.
Oh my God.
So anyway, that's just some of the interesting informant stuff. Oh, sorry, I'm showing all my notes here. Here we go. But now just to quickly run through the interesting serials, really interesting serials that I had the chance to uncover here. There were four of them. I'll try and keep this short, Ross, because I know we're running on time here now.
No, do your thing, man. No constraint. Really.
Number 29, serial number 29 is one that I've researched deeply. Now, you guys would have heard of suspect Xenophon Anthony, yeah? I'm sure most people would have heard of Xenophon. He's quite famous because Welsh chappie, Alex Lewis, researcher, he got that name through Freedom of Information Act requests, several of them actually. And that serial that he is a part of, number 29, the interesting thing about that is that it wasn't just all about Xenophon Anthony. There were 4 other suspects that were sent in by SFPD at the same time as Xenophon Anthony to get their latent fingerprints checked at the FBI. Now, with this submission, normally what you get is a report from the FBI's original contact by SFPD saying, right, we want you to check fingerprints against these suspects. You then get a receipt from the lab at the FBI of the evidence, and then a report with their conclusion on it. And that is 2 aspects: the handwritten notes written on there by the lab technician and the actual typewritten conclusion by the FBI. Now, in the number 29 serial, we do not have the typewritten conclusion by the FBI. That has not been released to us. But we do have the handwritten laboratory technician notes that he wrote down. Now, when the lab technicians write down their notes, right, they write down their checks against the latent prints. What they do is there's this little symbol. It's a circle with a slash through it. You might have seen them in these notes. If it's not a match to the fingerprints, they'll write not / symbol. This is all throughout the handwritten notes, right through the FBI files, not symbol, not symbol. This suspect was checked against the latent fingerprints, not symbol. Well, in the -29 stuff, right, where I'm looking through the handwritten notes here, and one of the suspects that got checked against the latent fingerprints, instead of not symbol, we've got maybe symbol written next to the suspect's name, right? So
you mentioned this.
The lab technician, but the insinuation from that is that the lab technician could not eliminate that suspect from the latent prints, on judging by the handwritten notes. But of course, we didn't have the typewritten conclusion to give us the actual good general from it. So at this stage, I'm thinking we've got a suspect in these files that has not been eliminated by the case latent prints at the FBI. Unfortunately, of course, like with most bloody research in this case, I went and debunked myself a few months later by finding the exact same scenario in serial number 35, where we had these handwritten notes, and again, another suspect that has not the symbol on, maybe the symbol on it, which again insinuates that they are, matching prints. And I'm sitting there thinking, really, is this another suspect? But with this one, we had the typewritten conclusion letter. So I was able to actually determine that the FBI concluded that the guy did not match the prints. So it was like, well, why the maybe? Why did they come back saying maybe this guy is? And what dawned on me then was that upon a little bit of further reading, that actual notage by the technician has to do with the identity of the suspect, not whether or not he actually matched the latent fingerprints. What he was saying that this suspect was maybe the suspect that you guys asked us to look at, not maybe he is the one that matched the prints. Remember what I was talking about before about how they weren't sure about the identity of some of these suspects. And I worked out that was actually what the maybe meant. So it was a real deflating experience to kind of shoot yourself down. I thought I'd come across something really neat there. But this is the thing about research though, Ross, is that no one sees and as everyone here can identify with, no one sees the dozens and dozens of hours that we actually do for no result. I have gone down so many rabbit holes with these FBI files and come out at the other side with nothing, hundreds of hours. And it's frustrating. But again, it's just an example of little things that we can find in these files. And the other one, serial number 139, and I referred to that before. I've actually spoken about it before, so I don't need to cover it here. This is the latent fingerprint similarity between the little list letter and the Paul Stein taxi cab for the left ring finger, and the letter written by Billy Hamlet. As I said, inquiries are continuing into that, and I'm going to try and get more information about that for us. So there's several requests ongoing, several bits of research ongoing that we may come up with more information about. I've already touched on number 181, which was the Riverside submission about the latent fingerprints, so I won't need to cover that. Sure. One thing I haven't actually gone over, Ross, which I won't actually get into either because it's not worthwhile doing so here, is number 205. What that was, in 1978, the SFPD got in touch with the FBI and basically said to them, right, Sherwood Morrill has said that the Riverside material is from the Zodiac, but John Shimoda from the US Postal Service has come along and said this is not from the Zodiac Killer. We have a bit of a discrepancy here with our handwriting experts. Yep. Can you please come in and be a tiebreaker? And they requested that the FBI take possession of copies of all of the Zodiac correspondence on file at the SFPD at that stage and be a bit of a tiebreaker and see, what was the Riverside from Zodiac, was the 1978 letter from Zodiac, and there or thereabouts. So basically what's interesting is we've got copies of the list of letters that San Francisco sent through to the FBI to test. Now, what's interesting, some of the letters that they sent through, they sent all the Riverside letters, obviously. They sent the 1978 back with you letter, which is unusual because most of the state guys said that wasn't Zodiac. But what they didn't send to the SFPD was actually just as revealing as what they did. What didn't end up getting sent there was the Pines card. Peek through the Pines card, Ross. I know there's been a lot of spotlight on that recently with the Donna Lass case, of course, obviously her being identified in quite recent times. And there's been some focus on that communication. Now, in 1978, San Francisco Police Department did not send that as part of their Zodiac correspondence to the FBI for checking. I'll just wanted to say that as reference. So that says to me they were questioning the authentication of that particular communication at that stage. Otherwise, they would have sent it because the similarities to the Halloween card with the writing on the address and all the rest of that, Paul Averley. So why didn't they send that communication in 1978? They sent the LA Times. The other thing too is that the LA Times letter that was sent just before that, right, 13th of March, 1971, that never went to the FBI ever until 1978. That wasn't sent in 1971 like all of the other ones had been. they never did that. I think LA must have sent that letter to the SFPD for their records, but the SFPD never sent the LA Times letter to the FBI until 1978. So that didn't become part of their files until then as well. So yeah, but why the Pines card wasn't sent in 78 for this test, I don't know. But anyway, the FBI's conclusion, right, this is what you all want to know, obviously. So they went through all the letters, the Riverside, all of the Zodiac correspondence, that we all know and love, and the 1978 letter. And holy crap, if they didn't do the whole sitting on the fence thing. I think sitting on the fence was a phrase coined by the FBI, because that's effectively what they did here. They turned around and says, look, there's some characteristics that suggest it may have been the Zodiac Killer, but the handwriting in most of these things, it looks like it's contorted. It looks like it's been disguised. There's all different varying speeds. There's varying this and that. We can't make an accurate, thing, but there's nothing to suggest that the same person may not have written all of these letters. So basically, it was a gigantic, convoluted, we don't know, bro.
That's so brutal. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't there multiple 78 letters, or which one specifically?
There is. There's multiple letters, but the only one that was sent to the FBI in 1978 was the Back With You one that a lot of people think Dave Toschi wrote, which he did not write that. I'm going to tell you. I'm not suggesting. I am telling. He did not write that letter. And he, that was the letter that was sent through to them. None of the others. But from what I understand, it wasn't until was it May or June 1978 or something like that? So some of those 78 letters may not have actually gone through the state guys by the time that submission came through. I think we're talking about there's the because there are a couple of other letters there in 78.
Yeah, I mean, what I was coming to, like, I agree with Dion. I don't think Toschi wrote the 78 I am back with you letter. I mean, if SFPD or the FBI thought Toschi wrote it, why even include that in the tranche that you're sending out for verification, right? Because, like, if Toschi wrote it, you've already eliminated it, right? So where's the question that this is Zodiac, right? So the whole thing makes no sense.
Seems strange. I mean, I know Shimoda authenticated the 78, but I mean, I could give you an episode on Shimoda in itself. I don't want to get involved in that. Basic and moral. Sorry, I could give you a whole episode of that, especially him and his Riverside material. Another common misconception in this case is that all of the handwriting experts disagreed with each other. That's not true. Only one handwriting expert was at odds with all of the others. We just need to make that perfectly clear as well.
100%.
So we just need to establish that. I'm not going to get too much into it. We all have our own personal views on the handwriting side of things. I definitely have my own opinion on things, but then again, I have done informal training on document examination and handwriting analysis. So my opinions are backed up with a little bit of knowledge that I've acquired. And I'm not going to condescend to other people and say, this is what it's done. They're still my opinions. I'm not an expert, but I like to inform myself on a particular subject before I go sprouting out about it, a la David Attenborough, David Gilmour scenario. I'm not going to go to the Zodiac community to get advice on handwriting analysis because no one's a handwriting expert in the Zodiac community. I'm going to go to a handwriting analysis expert to get my information from them.
100%. Well, it's your personal investigation. It's not necessarily something you're presenting unless you feel the need to with confirmation.
100% to share things. Yeah, and as I say, I don't like pretending to be an expert in something I'm not. So I'm not going to do that. I have very solid conclusions on my own feelings about these letters, but as I said, it's not about me. I'm more about relating what the FBI have said in their investigation, because that's the objective stuff here. That's the stuff that's on paper that we need to deal with. What I feel about it, how you or how the community feels about it, we'll have our own views.
100%.
But that's what the FBI said about it. And I just wanted to point out, as I said, there was no peek through the Pines card in that submission. And that the FBI basically were asked to be a tiebreaker, and they said, "We don't care, bro." Again, that's just the typical FBI attitude of, "No, washing your hands, mate."
Yeah, it's not our mess. Exactly, what are you coming to us for?
not our problem, bro. Yeah. So that's basically what I wanted to cover with the main of that stuff, with the FBI stuff. And gee, that did take a long time, didn't it? We're sort of running into a couple of hours here, mate.
Didn't I warn you when I saw your notes? That was fascinating, Dion. Really, really awesome.
We might have to have a part 2 to go over the rest of it, or yeah.
No, I mean, sure, you're always welcome back for a part 2. You know, you're a part of the PXF roster here. But do you want to discuss the latest Z13 solution for Ranchak's channel, or do you want to go to your one killer theory?
Sure. No, we can just go to some things that are happening around the community, like that solution now, if you like, mate. And what we can do is perhaps, as I said, this has sort of run on a bit, hasn't it? We can look at doing a part 2 later on with the one killer theory. That would actually be better anyway, because that's going to take some time as well, especially integrating that with your theory regarding the non-canonicals. I think there's some good stuff we can come up with there. So yeah. So you bring up that recent Z13 solution by Ryan Garlick that he presented to Dave Oranchak, and how do you feel about that, Ross? Anyway, well, you can start, maybe.
Okay, well, like, as the community knows, I know absolutely nothing about cryptography. Not my background. I'm no David Oranchak, and nor do I ever pretend to be one in any platform. But I'll start with the good as far as him using, is it the 340 key or the 408 key, whichever key he used. That was sound reasoning, I thought. I liked how that was his starting point. It's really then I'll go to where he lost me. When he switches, does he switch the R to a T for torpedo? I don't see how Zodiac, because at this point, Zodiac has made, is this his third cipher or his fourth? So I don't see how he would make now, granted, it's the short one. So what we're both going to tell you is it's an arbitrary solution. It's too short to have any actual data on it. So it's all kind of, ambiguous and doesn't really matter. That being said, I don't see how he makes one mistake. And if you want to do Zodiac is, well, okay, an Air Forceman like Dion, a Navyman, you're going to tell me he's a Navyman that just spelled torpedo wrong? I mean, I don't see what world that a Navy coder gets that wrong. And well, come on, I had most of it, but you need to just swap one letter to make the word work. The response to the doctor was good. Like, I do see that working. Using the key was good. Just that misspelling threw me off. And then I don't want to be hard on Ryan because I think he's clearly a smart guy. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the presentation. I really liked the episode. Dave's the man. Ryan did really good. It's a solid theory. I'll say that. I don't think it's a correct theory though, because what kind of killed it for me was the confirmation bias of one time Arthur Lee Allen had torpedoes in his house. That was just like, dude, when he started saying I have a suspect, I was like, I'm gonna lose it if it's Allen. That's me. Dion can respond.
Honestly, I have to say, Ross, I completely agree with you in your assessment of that. And what I'll add is I was quite impressed too with the way that he interpreted the solution as a bit of a piss take of Dr. Marsh, because Dr. Marsh had challenged him. And this is another thing that Craigle in his interview pointed out, that Zodiac was so keen to reply to these experts that were having a go at him. It's something that he probably would have done. If you're so clever, give us your name. So as Ryan Garlick said, or Dr. Garlick said, here's a cipher. Have you solved the last one? My name is. And that's what I like about it too, is that he's gone off the have you solved the last one, which apparently does seem to be a reference to the last cipher, the 340. But like you said, where I get lost as well in the translation of the solution, he says right before the solution, my name is. So it just doesn't seem the right context for Dr. Eat a Torpedo when he's just said my name is. I would expect to see some kind of name in there, not the name of the killer, don't get me wrong, but like, say, for instance, Alfred E. Newman. That would be something I would expect to see in there. But don't get me wrong, I know I'm not a cipher expert, and I would defer to those guys about it. And there's nothing I can say that Dave hasn't already said about this thing, about the whole unicity distance and how we'll never get a solution. But personally, my interpretation of that letter is pretty much the same as these guys, except I think we're going to have some kind of name in that solution. And also the same as you, Ross, the whole changing of the letters, for such a short cipher and such a concentrated cipher, I'm not sure we're going to see errors in it like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, we might, but it just seems fitting 4 words into a 13-character symbol like that just doesn't seem right to me. And a lot of people have said, it sounds like something Zodiac would say. Dr. Eater Torpedo. I have to respectfully disagree with it a little bit. It does kind of have a ring, but I respectfully disagree. I don't think it's something Zodiac would actually put in a little cipher like that. Yes, I think he's going to say something that's going to take the piss. I mean, look at the 340 solution. Where did that lead us? We found some stuff out about it, but it ran us round in circles. Like, this is what Zodiac does in his letters, though. It's all manipulation. And that's exactly what the Z13 was. It was just a freaking, here, have some busy work. But I have to summarize, by saying I like it. I like the solution. I like the application. It's not a stupid thing like that. You see some people, flip this letter around, do that convoluted theory, boom. Arthur Lee Allen. But why does everyone connect things to Arthur Lee Allen? Why? At least convert into a suspect that hasn't been bloody ruled out by all of the evidence and witnesses, guys.
My Arthur Lee Allen thing is, when he doubled down on that, was I've never seen anything in Allen's background that says that he's capable of creating any of the ciphers, never mind the Z13. Now, I know there's the Phil Tucker story that him and his wife saw the codes that he got from an inmate and whatever. That's great. But and I'm not saying Allen is an unintelligent guy. Clearly, a chemistry major, a biology major with a chemistry minor. Clearly an intelligent guy, but I don't know that chemistry correlates to cryptography. It's two completely different subjects. You know what I mean?
They are. And like, the Zodiac Killer could have acquired a lot of his knowledge. He was obviously an avid reader. He could have acquired a lot of his knowledge through books and being fastidious like that, which he obviously did. He took a lot of his inspiration from other material. So, as I said, it's logical to deduce that, those sort of scenarios. But the whole Art Allen thing, look, he's been investigated for decades. People have been going over him for so long now. Every time his name comes up in a conversation, I've only been doing this seriously for a decade. I can't imagine the poor buggers that have been doing this for decades and decades. Every time they see the name of these guys come up again, it must be, really, Alan? Can't you come up with better than that? And I'm not sitting here saying I know whether he was the Zodiac Killer or not. I don't. But all we can go off is what we know from the files, what we've been told from the different law enforcement establishments, and what the witnesses have told us. And none of them point to Alan, I'm sorry, except if you want to accept Mike Mageau's ID. And good luck getting that out of him on a witness stand.
And even that was like, the exact phrasing, you, Craig, Monique, you would all know it better than me, but I believe it was he had a round face like that guy, right? Yeah. He didn't say it was that guy. He said it was like a similar profile or whatever. So,
and let's not forget that in 2007, in the This Is the Zodiac Speaking documentary, he turned around and said that the Zodiac's name was Richard. So what do you do?
That was my favorite one. That's the behind the scenes of the Blu-ray. And by the way, I love the movie. I have the 4K Ultra Disc over here. But I was talking about that on a recent show. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about the time Mike said he followed us around all night long from the burger joint to the parking lot, and also his name was Richard. I'm like, oh, there you go, guys, smoking gun.
Someone's been reading Gray Smith.
Richard is the worst. But like I said, like Ryan's thing, sound reasoning, but then like when he says like Zodiac has a bus bomb diagram, he said, I'm having a blast. It was like, I get it, and it tracks for his theory, but like it's a little bit confirmation biasy. Like him saying blast or bomb, none of that means that the solution is torpedo to me. Cheryl brought up Charlie Chan at Treasure Island earlier. I'm surprised his response to Dr. Marsh wasn't something like, I am Dr. Zodiac with a K, and just screw around and
put Dr. Zodiac as a name
in there. So
that would make sense. And like, as I said, Alfred E. Newman, I think it was Tom that came up with that solution. And that to me is so far the most viable one anyone has come up with, because it's simple, it follows all the rules, and it's a name. I like that suggestion from Cheryl.
Yeah, another pop culture reference. I mean, I'd give Ryan maybe a close second in terms of ones that we have seen that have a reason. When he's like, well, and for my next reveal, this is the first connection between a cipher and a suspect. I was like, please be Kane, please be Geik, please be anybody but Alan. Be any suspect but Alan. Give me another guy. Give me another guy. I don't care. Just any other guy. I don't care. I'll take it. But
Yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah, and as I said, I like the reasoning too. Harry's done it. Again, he's thinking outside the box a little bit, but not going so far outside the box so that he's pissing on the box. But yeah,
100%.
like you say, he's still introducing elements to this thing that require a little bit of bending. And it's like anything in true crime, the true solution to anything in these cases is going to fit. It's going to fit nicely. The questions are going to be answered. There's still going to be some things that don't make sense. There always will be. As anyone that studied the BTK Dennis Rader case will tell you, even Rader himself couldn't answer some of the bloody questions that they were asking him because it just wasn't important to him. Things that are important to us may not necessarily have been important to the Zodiac, so why would he care and how would he be able to answer it? Dennis Rader actually did a cipher, and when investigators, or I think when they caught him and they were drilling him about it, they said to him, what was the solution to the cipher? He says, well, I wouldn't bloody know.
Yeah.
He didn't even know the solution to his own freaking cipher.
People pick it up like when killers make ciphers, it's all very technical, and it's like, dude, they might have just wrote gibberish, and maybe that guy himself doesn't. Now, obviously, like Kaczynski was like what, Harvard grad and Berkeley, whatever. So I mean, yeah, but if you were to, with all the stuff they found in his notes, if you were to go and say, hey, Ted, tell us the solution to every single cipher you wrote, when he's sitting in a jail cell, do you think he would know every single one off the top of his head? Probably not.
Good luck with that.
Probably not. You know what I mean? Unless he wrote it down. So yeah, I mean, it's all good. If you want to do one killer and full circle next time, let me pull up my secret source here, which is actually just Zodiac trivia on Spotify, and me and Dion could kind of do something that I've never done before, which is release maybe part of the Ross Geraci suspect theory, which is something that's never been done. I've never stated my suspects. Not seeing it on here. Is this? Oh wait, that's one of them. Yeah, okay, this one. Okay, so Ross has never mentioned his suspect's profession, so big reveal here. Possibly, well, Dion knows what it is because he leans into my theory, but we've talked about it behind the scenes. We'll just
they're independent theories, but we both align. Yeah.
It's not. I don't think either of us are concrete, but in terms of what we've both seen, I think this is probably a better direction than most. And also, I like the fact that Johnny Ray Swindle being a Navy radio man, Sherry's brother and father working at March. I think there could be a correlation with some of these Navy members with this profession you're about to discuss. We still got you, Dion? You disappeared on us, lad. I'm gonna take him out and hold him in the green room until he comes back. Right before my big reveal. You guys can hit me up in the chat. I'm gonna hold down the fort, but I think you guys will find this next sequence interesting. I wonder if Dion's having some latency. Whoa, he dropped. Hopefully he'll be able to rejoin. Questions for Ross in the chat, go. I'll pull up the tube and see what you guys are talking about. Well, I ain't gonna tell my suspect, but I'll give a little. I don't know. Maybe that Dion dropped. Maybe I'll just keep it to myself. Absolutely hilarious moment. Let me message him in the background while we're cooking. Cue the Jeopardy theme. Bro, definitely got hit with a lag spike at the wrong moment, eh, lads? Yeah, I know. I guess we'll just have to tune into part 2, huh, Pixie? Tune in next time for Ross's big reveal. Let's see if we can get our boy our boy back. Well, in the meantime, let's do this. Let's do this Zodiac trivia while y'all aren't engaging. While the Zodiac's first cipher was cracked within a week by a school teacher and his wife, what everyday object did they use to help break the code, and which specific TV show originally inspired their decryption method? Anybody know that one? Does anyone know that one? You guys wish I did this to increase suspense. Actually, he just randomly dropped, but it just ended up being at a really ironic moment. I mean, I can get into it, but I don't know about the big reveal without our boy. Mr. Dion, is he coming back? Fa la 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 la. I think his network went hard down, lads. I think I did look up the answers to these, but I forgot what it was. Shall we play the episodes and see if it tells us?
The Zodiac. Years when it showed up at their vacation rental. Remember Flop the Penguin's incredible comeback after his injury? And that guy who broke the world record for most times.
Is that an ad? Pretty sure that's an ad. Hope you guys are enjoying this dead space. Is Jay still with us? I got Dan Cooper behind me for you, bud. Here. I mean, as relevant as Deathstroke the Terminator is in this moment, and my signed by Roddy Pepper Blu-ray, we could pull that aside and maybe do a little gray smithing for you guys. Look at that. Robert Gray Jr.'s. Wait, hold on.
Mysterious edition of 5 daily trivia questions. On this day in 1969, the Zodiac Killer sent his second coded message to the San Francisco Chronicle. So let's explore some lesser known.
Any guesses on what TV show the Hardens used to and what tool they used to break their thing?
Was cracked within a week by a school teacher and his wife. What everyday object did they use to help break the code? What TV show originally inspired their decryption method?
Batman.
Question 2. The Zodiac claimed he was inspired by the 1932 film The Most Dangerous Game, which 2 pieces of evidence found at crime scenes supported
Where's the
as a
answer?
hunting scene. This led investigators to search for suspects with Film Society membership. And why did this observation become crucial to the investigation from the theater's Film Society? Only 47 people attended the screening.
Facts off fifth. Up to 70%.
Where the hell are the answers on this thing?
Spring life to the fullest, or the family who found their missing cat after 3 years when it.
The ads on Zodiac, true.
The Zodiac claimed he was inspired by the 1932 film The Decryption Method. Question 2. The Zodiac claimed.
What, did it give the answer? What the hell?
News stories.
Where the hell are the answers?
Shock media.
Greetings, true crime followers.
Let's see what it says
I'm
here.
Journey Joe Mitchell, and welcome to a mysterious edition of 5 daily trivia questions.
Attorney Joe Mitchell.
On this day in 1969, the Zodiac Killer sent his second coded message to the San Francisco.
I was thinking
Chronicle.
Batman, but
So let's explore some lesser known facts.
what are the
about
other old,
America's
like,
most
mystery
infamous
shows?
Unsolved cases.
Sherlock Holmes.
Question 1. While the Zodiac's first cipher was cracked within a week by a school teacher and his wife, what everyday object did they use to help break the code, and which specific TV
I forgot what it
show
was. It's like a
originally inspired
protractor or something, I think, right? Or a ruler? Maybe it's a ruler.
Question 2. The Zodiac claimed he was inspired by the 1932 film The Most. Donald and Betty Harden used their breakfast cereal boxes' letter frequency charts in kids' puzzles, inspired by an episode of The Hardy Boys.
The Hardy Boys. Breakfast cereal boxes and their kids' puzzles. The Hardy Boys. Man, I haven't seen the Hardy Boys in years. Dion, what have you done to two pieces of evidence found at the crime scenes that supported a claim of the most dangerous game? I don't know. I feel like it's pretty a lackluster answer for that one. Rope from Berryessa, and what else?
Were broken using letter patterns. Their kitchen table decryption method is now taught in FBI training. Question 2 asked, the Zodiac claimed he was inspired by the 1932 film The Most Dangerous Game. Which 2 pieces of evidence found at crime scenes supported this claim?
2 pieces of evidence found at crime scenes supporting Most Dangerous Game influence.
And how did this connection help investigators develop his psychological profile? Answer, police found a movie ticket stub to a revival screening of the film. And
police found a movie ticket stub to a survival screening of the... What is this guy making stuff up? I've never heard of that one. Where was there a movie, a Most Dangerous Game movie ticket stub?
A piece of the victim's shirt was cut in the same pattern as in the movie's hunting scene.
And they're trying to say that he cut Paul Stein's shirt in the same pattern of a scene from Most Dangerous Game. I don't know. I got to rewatch Most Dangerous Game, the first one, I guess, because I don't remember any scene when the pattern was cut like that.
Led investigators to search for suspects with Film Society memberships. Question 3 asked, what unique clothing item did surviving victim Brian Hartnell describe the Zodiac wearing during the Lake Berryessa attack? And how did this detail lead police to investigate an unlikely...
Oh yeah, that's the that third one is the black executioner hood that they investigated the lamplighters. I mean, but one thing I don't understand about the lamplighters is, like, wasn't that like a children's performance group? So why do they think like Zodiac would be influenced by that, unless they're assuming like he's a parent of one of the lamplighter kids? That one really never made much sense to me. Let's see if we can find our Latte Dion. Yeah, he's not even online. I think his connection might have went hard down, lads. Well, I guess we'll never know what Ross's suspect's career profession is, guys. You know, we super tried. Hit me with your last questions. I think I'm gonna wrap. We got UFC, but I can give you my UFC picks while we wait for Dion. Volk regaining the title. Paddy Pimblett. It's a submission. Actually, we'll pull up the card. I got Patricio Pitbull, honestly. That's my guy. You watching UFC tonight, Pixie? Who are your picks? I lost my guest. What do you want me to do, Pixie? I'm not a magician. Oh, Pitbull's fighting Yair Rodriguez. I hope Pitbull kills him. John Silva's going to smoke Bryce Mitchell. I totally forgot Reyes is on this card. Probably Krylov. Yeah, we have to wait for part 2, Pixie. It's too bad, because those next couple Zodiac trivias were juicy ones. Dion, what have you done to us, brother? Good thing he got all his parts out before he dropped, huh? Let's go. Lopez is fire. I mean, Lopez is my guy. But I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough one, lads. Patty's a... This is the mod life you chose. And Invasion USA wasn't my fault. I had to move, but I got it. I'll bounce it around in the schedule. It's not going away. Pitbull, I'm the biggest hater. Pitbull's about to smoke Yair. Do we give Dion 5? I'm gassed. I had to eat my box of Swedish fish to power me through that interview, guys. I'm different. Let me pull up the tube. Mr. Dion Walker. Yeah, I bet his internet dropped because he's like not even on, guys. All right, let's see what you guys are talking about in there. I did look up the answers to the. Whoops. Pitbull's finna go ham straight out of Bellator and PFL to UFC to the big leagues, baby. What do you guys think of Dion? Bro definitely has the deets on the FBI files. Yo, good brother. Is that Wei Li Zhang? I don't know if I don't think she's fighting, but if you mean the Chinese champion, appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming through. As always, with Wayne and Garth. How was Tahoe, Pixie? Nice. He's up in Humboldt. That's chill. I like Humboldt. I'm a big Humboldt guy. Maybe we can get him on Yuba County 5 to find those Gary Mathias glasses up there in the Plumas. Dion screwed me on the show. He's never coming back. Last time we ever have Dion Walker. Okay, that part's true. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Bro definitely has the FBI files on lock. Apparently, he gave me some homework. I got to go through those. Top 3 Zodiac authors. And why is it Graysmith? Pixie, go. Ah, there he is. Oh yeah, they did China on China last fight, right? Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, they were both sick. Like Donald Trump says, China. China Trump tariffs. All right, Dion's out. His internet crashed, but that's okay. Luckily, we got the 2-hour interview done. So I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to ask Ross questions. Yes, I am doing Zodiac Files Episode 5. Yes, it is located in the Bay Area. So is Episode 6. That should tell you everything you need to know. Drew did Yuba over on my channel, right? Is that the show you mean? Yeah, we did the Yuba anniversary. Yuba people are totally like yeah, I'm still talking to Drew, but we did the Yuba anniversary on my channel. We did it for is it February 25th? 1978. Again, I'm far from the expert on that one, but very interesting case. Okay. What do I think about the witness that saw 2 guys in Zodiac car? The guy tested girlfriend's car. His name's William Crow. So the William Crow story is interesting. I actually, because William Crow goes on to become an attorney, so I think his attention to detail is pretty good, and I find it pretty credible. His story does change, which, as Richard Grinnell said, it sounds like the fish that caught got bigger as time went on. So I don't really know what to make of that. Like, I think Crow is credible, right? At the same time, the fact that he changed his story, and then if it was like, I think the car chased him. Okay, this is what I think. I think the car chased him. I don't know that it had 2 guys in it, though. Because if you're the Zodiac or you're a serial killer and you see this kid testing his girlfriend's sports car, and then you're going to try to chase it with a Valiant, or what do you call it, a Chevy, like, if you got two guys in the car, how are you going to catch up to that car? You know what I mean? You're going to have double the weight. But I mean, that doesn't rule out two guys from Lake Herman Road. I think, you know, that's the most interesting thing. But yeah, look out for Zodiac Files episode 5. I'll definitely be covering Lake Herman Road and the William Crow story. Horan's the homie. Horan supported the channel when we needed him. I know people don't love when I say that. I was going to ask Dion about that because, you know what I mean? Like Horan or not, you got to understand why someone would have a no-killer theory. You know what I mean? Because Zodiac is just that esoteric and nuanced of a case. Bing bong. Let's go. What is Jan fighting on the undercard? Is that why you brought it up? I'm not catching the prelims. Was it? He said it was a Valiant. I don't know cars that well. All right, my friends, we lost our boy, but that's okay because it gave us some good stuff. The One Killer Theory episode will absolutely be sick. We'll talk about my full circle theory with the non-canonicals, and then we'll save those last two tidbits for Dion's part 2. But since we got cut off, I will leave you guys with a little something. The Ross Geraci full circle suspect supplement theory. Profession career reveal, since we got cut off and Dion dropped right when we were about to announce it. What if the Zodiac was a merchant marine? A merchant mariner? Would that provide a reason for the 6 to 8 month gaps between the non-canonicals and the later gaps between the canonicals? What do you guys think? Weigh in on the live chat, weigh in on the comments. Zodiac Files episode 17. Dion Walker. Links will be below on for his channel and his One Killer Theory essay. I'm probably gonna jet on that. I'll take a final question or two if we can squeeze it in. Okay, word. Yeah, I'm gonna go get over there and get the prelims on. Pumped for the main card though. Yeah, I've got his book too. He signed it for me. I think I have a couple. I think Horan gave us a couple of the boop, 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 right here on my magical shelf of. Some guy just yelled outside. Vandenberg Air Force Base. I wish SB would retest Friends. It's in Dominguez Edwards' case. SB law enforcement does not have a ton of murder cases. They should be able to do it. Well, I've tried to FOIA them multiple times. They just, the last cold case detective I talked to retired. I tried it again, and they sent me that same like copy paste email of like, "Go away, Ross, you're an idiot." But I assume you've seen my episode 4 of Zodiac Files, the Dominguez Edward, the Gaviota Beach murders. I mean, that's where all the stuff gets broken down. All right, guys, I'm out. Go peep Dion. Go hit him up on Facebook. You can support me over here. You can go log in free with a Gmail. Boom, boom. Are you talking about Drew Beeson's Donald Lee Cheney? I'm a big fan. I'd say Drew's in the lead. I would say Drew's in the lead if it's a suspect race. I would put Beeson right at the top. Maybe a little Rodelli in second with KQ. I'm not a suspect guy. You guys know me. I don't really care. But in terms of circumstantial arguments, those two by far. And then Ross Geraci in third. Zodiac's a random merchant marine cult member. All right, guys. I'm going to be out in 10 seconds. Appreciate you all. Thanks, Fire Pixie. Appreciate you helping with the modding. Like, sub, share. Click the join button for membership. You can hit me on Patreon. Join free with the Gmail. I don't know when I'm coming back to do the next one of these. Maybe it's Dion part 2. We'll get it locked in if his internet doesn't crap out. Appreciate you guys coming through. UFC tonight. Go check it out. Like, sub, share. I'm out. Tune in next week for Bloodsport with Greg.